Everybody to the October 2022 CEC 20 meeting. Steve, are you up the host? Who's
Can
the
you
host?
make me co-host so I can start muting people?
¿Me pueden ser un co?
You're the host. Can you? Could you? Apologies, everyone. Bear with us as we get the technology working here. Good, Sylvia. So transcripts enabled. And Sylvia, did you make Anthony Aguilar a co-host? Okay. Vito, can you take roll call, please?
Good evening, everybody. We're going to attempt to do this. Try to mute. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So President Steve Stowe, Vice President Jennifer Hugh, is she on?
Here.
Thank
Here.
you.
Sorry.
Second Vice President Elizabeth Chan. Can you activate your camera and wave? Okay. Recording Secretary Vito Labella, hello. Borough Appointee Marie Brugadas.
She's excused.
Excused. Councilmember Gada Amen. Gada, are you here somewhere? Okay. Councilmember Yona Asufi.
Hi, I'm here.
Hi, Yona. Virtual. Councilmember Maya Rosenblatt. Maya, you on? Okay. Councilmember Kevin Zhao. Hello. Person, Councilmember Joyce Z. Thank you. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 virtual and remote, so we do have a quorum.
Are we set up? Is everything, Sylvia, are you still getting set up? Are we good? Okay.
Maya joined? Okay. Hello, Maya.
I'm on. Is everyone on?
Okay, thank you, Vito. Okay, the first announcement to make is just to remind everyone that this is a public meeting and it is being recorded. We just like to announce that we are holding the meeting in hybrid format. We are here at PS 205, the Clarion School. First announcement is our interpreters. We have interpreters, Arabic, Spanish, and Mandarin here tonight. We thank them for being here. You should see video of these interpreters. We are going to have them announce instructions for any attendees who may wish to dial into the language lines at this time. Could our Arabic interpreters please introduce themselves?
Good afternoon. This is the Arabic interpretation announcement. مساء الخير. توجد خدمة ترجمة باللغة العربية للاستفادة من خدمة الترجمة الفورية في اجتماع العام النهاردة، برجاء الاتصال على رقم 347-966-4114. رقم الاتصال لغرفة الترجمة للغة العربية مرة أخرى 347-966-4114. رمز الدخول لغرفة اللغة العربية هو 439-420-626 والضغط على رمز الشباك. رمز الغرفة للعربي مرة تانية 439-420-626 وضغط على رمز الشباك، وبرجاء وضع أنفسكم على الصامت لحين نحتاج للتكرم. شكرا جزيلا. The Arabic announcement is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Could our Mandarin interpreters please make their announcement?
Sure. The following message is in Mandarin. 大家晚上好，需要普通话翻译的家长请拨打电话347-966-4114，并拨打会议代码785-684-945井号键。我再重复一遍，需要普通话翻译的家长请拨打电话347-966-4114， 并拨打会议代码785684945#请大家在会议的过程中将自己的手机和电脑保持静音状态，除非您是需要发言的时候，您可以打开。谢谢。Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. And could our Spanish interpreters please introduce themselves?
Hi, good evening. The following message will be said in Spanish. Buenas noches. Hoy Marisela junto a mi Jaime estaremos ofreciendo el servicio de interpretación en español. Por favor, marque al 347-966-4114 y ingrese el número de conferencia 489-513-92, símbolo numeral. Si desea escuchar audio en español, pero desea permanecer en esta sala de conferencia con Zoom, para ver la reunión usando su computadora, silencie su computadora y el volumen y marque su teléfono a la línea de conferencia en español. Nuevamente, la línea de conferencia en español es 347-966-4114 y ingresa el número de conferencia 489-513-92, símbolo numeral. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. As a reminder, everyone, because we have interpretation in 3 languages, please try to speak slower than usual to allow the interpreters to keep up. During the public comment session tonight, we will have time for members of the public to speak. If anyone would like to speak, I'm just enabling the speaker sign-up sheet now, which should have been posted online. I believe it was. And I am just going to open up that sheet. Okay, so the speaker sign-up sheet, if anyone would like to sign up to speak later tonight, they can use the online form, which is posted on the CEC website. I will also put the link in the chat. Bear with me, please. Okay, the link to the speaker sign-up sheet is in the chat. We will also take comments from individuals in the language lines, and we will also take comments from anyone who's dialed into the meeting on their phone. That's all for administrative items. I just want to share the agenda for tonight's meeting. And bear with me here. Okay, the agenda for tonight's meeting, obviously the call to order and roll call. We will next approve the calendar meeting minutes from last month. We will have PS 205 if they would like to make any opening remarks. Then we will have a presentation from the Office of District Planning. We'll have our superintendent's report, council president's report, discussion and vote on a CEC bylaw amendment, public speaking, and then we will actually, I'm gonna move that we move the discussion and no, actually we can keep it there, I think. And then we have public speaking, and then we have resolution 5 requesting District 20 implement academic screen middle school programs, 15 minutes. Okay. There's two adjustments to the schedule I just want to make before we begin, and it will require a vote of council members. One is to, it's going to be to remove the discussion vote on CEC bylaw amendment from the meeting agenda. So I just want to make a motion to just take that off the agenda.
Seconded.
Second. What's that?
Can we do an all in favor, or do you want to?
Yeah, we should do a vote, yeah. Or actually, yeah, all in favor. So all in favor of taking that off the agenda?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thanks. And then a second item I just want to introduce is we're going to add, there's an updated version of the resolution. And according to our bylaws, if we introduce it the day of the meeting, we have to approve it to add it. And I sent it around earlier and posted it on the website. And so everyone should have seen it and everyone at the meeting has a copy of it. So I'm just going to vote to add that version to the agenda. And we should.
Second for that?
Second.
So all in favor of adding the amended version of the resolution to the agenda?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thanks. So those are the two schedule changes. And then following the calendar meeting, we will have our business meeting, and there's currently nothing on the agenda other than approving the minutes. So that should be a very quick meeting. Okay. I see we have Principal Mandel in the room. Did you want to introduce and just make a few comments about the school? Maybe any one of these is fine, I think. Do you want to come up to mine and sit here? Sure.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to PS 205. We're an elementary school from pre-K through grade 5, about 1,160 students. Our school is comprised of a very wide variety of children. We have general ed, gifted and talented, 12-to-1 special education classes, ICT, as well as an ACES program, the coffee shop. We're very proud of the arts over here at PS 205. We have a chorus, an orchestra, and a full-time band, which we brought back now after COVID. These regulations have opened up. We also have partnership with the Marquee Studio. We also work heavily with outside organizations like the BCA, the Brooklyn Chinese Association associated with our school. We have many wonderful enriching activities with clubs and after school programs. And we're happy to have host the CEC meeting tonight at PS 205. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I've always been very impressed. Every time I've spoken to Principal Mandel, I really am impressed with the work they're doing here at 205, as I am at so many of our schools. So first on the agenda, I just want to actually take a moment and welcome some of our guests here tonight. In a minute, the Office of District Planning, Jamie Dollinger and Perry Stein will be presenting. I believe I also saw Donovan Swanson from the Borough President's Office. We have, on behalf of Jane Kapitanakis, we have Lisa Fernandez, I believe, representing the CSA. And I'm just scrolling through. We have Ellen McHugh, the co-president of the Citywide Council on Special Education. And I'm just looking through the list, and I apologize. We have Tamara Stern, the president of the District 20 President's Council. And numerous principals I see on the call as well. So our first order, and of course our district superintendent, David Preto, and family leadership coordinator, Bill Chin, and family support coordinator, Sylvia Jasinski, who have been incredibly helpful getting this meeting set up. So thank you. Let's get going with the presentation from Office of District Planning. Jamie and Perry, are you there, and are you able to share your screen?
Hey, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Great to be with you all tonight. We are here, but I don't think I'm able to share my screen at the moment. So if I could be enabled as a host, that would be great.
Sylvia is enabling you right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Great to be here with you all again. It was great to have the chance to speak with you all about a month ago and to hear from the council regarding what you all see as the biggest needs and priorities in District 20, and to learn more about many of you. I know that there were some folks that weren't able to make that meeting, so I want to reintroduce myself. My name is Perry Stein, and I work on the Brooklyn team at the Office of District Planning. And also want to give my colleague Jamie a chance to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Perry. Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Dollinger. I'm the Senior Director of Brooklyn Planning in the Office of District Planning. Thank you, as Perry mentioned, for having us again. We were happy to hear a little bit from you last month around particularly council members' journeys to finding CEC 20 priorities that they want to focus on and some things that they wanted us to highlight in the data, which is what we plan to do this evening. If you are on the council and you have questions, feel free to let us know, but we're excited to continue this conversation.
Sure, thanks, Jamie. Just to kind of add some more context and to piggyback, tonight's presentation will be answering some questions that the council had posed for us both at the last meeting as well as since then, and also diving into the district data summary, which we sent to the council and council members should have access to. Also want to note that we would have loved to have been there with you all in person tonight, but we had meetings back to back here that made it so we were attending virtually. Just a real experience to see my face behind some of you all on the big screen, but it's an honor. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to be sharing the District 20 data summary. Give me 1 second, make sure. Okay. All right. So you should all see the District 20 data summary on the screen right now. As I mentioned earlier, this was shared with the council at the end of the summer. And I know many of you have had the chance to unpack this data summary in detail, and we're very much looking forward to hearing any questions you have at the end of our presentation tonight. Tonight, we're going to go through sort of the highlights of this document, touch on some points that we think are relevant to many of the concerns you or needs and priorities you all have voiced to us, as well as share some of the high-level data trends that we've noticed that we think are valuable to point to. Also want to note that this is a lengthy document, about 32 pages long. This table of contents is very helpful if you want to kind of go through this item by item. But as mentioned, tonight we're going to just do sort of the highlights given the time constraints. So here what we see is the citywide enrollment trend across all districts over the last decade or so. So I think before we dive into any individual district's data, it's really helpful to understand the trend that's going on across the city, because it's valuable to see, are there differences in a specific district compared to what's going on in the city as a whole? Are some trends more pronounced, or maybe we see the opposite trend in a specific district? Obviously, New York City is a really large school system, so what's going on across the city may be unique, or what's going on in a specific district may be unique to what's going on in other districts or across the city. So when we look at this data, we see that enrollment across New York City schools was increasing up through around the 2016 to 17 school year. So there was pretty steady, increase in enrollment over that, start of the last decade to around 2017. And then over the last 5 years or so, 4 to 5 school years, I'd say, there's been decline in enrollment across New York City schools. And when we look specifically at the last 2 school years, which were 20 to 21, as well as 21 to 22, we see that the decline in enrollment across the city was expedited. Of course, we know that these were the school years that were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So, we can definitely point to that as, a factor that sort of expedited enrollment decline that was already appearing in schools prior to the onset of the pandemic. Moving on, we then can turn to District 20 specifically and look to what is happening in District 20, and we can then from there ascertain, is it different from the citywide trend, or is it more similar? So we do see that over the last 5 years in District 20, there is enrollment decline. But what's also really important to note is that District 20 is one of the more crowded districts in New York City. It has quite high enrollment, and a lot of the buildings in the district were starting from a point of very high enrollment. So, some decline that was seen didn't necessarily mean that there was a lot of space opening up in school buildings. But what would be more accurate to say would be that, enrollment was lost, but buildings remain quite crowded or, near their full utilization. So what we see happening in District 20, which is actually quite similar to a lot of other districts, is that the earlier grades, so early childhood as well as elementary school, had the steepest decline in enrollment of the different grade levels. One of our theories that we've been working through as an office that we're interested to see how it develops is that families with younger children that maybe didn't have roots as deep in their community or in their schools were more comfortable leaving to other cities, other states during the pandemic. And that resulted in enrollment decline that was more steep at those grade levels. But we do see that at the middle school and high school grade levels, there was decline as well. And what's also very important and interesting to look at is this bottom table here, which shows the entry points for the grade levels. So we see that kindergarten, 6th grade, and 9th grade all saw declines in enrollment over the last 5 to 6 school years. And interestingly, these entry points were felt pretty comparably across kindergarten, 6th, and 9th grade over the last 2 years, which were those years impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So those entry points can be sort of foreboding or foreshadowing of what is to come, as of course the students that are in entering kindergarten will then articulate throughout elementary school. The students that are entering 9th grade are the grade level that will enter and articulate through high school. So if you have a small entering class, that means that that class is the one that's going to be carried throughout the grade levels. So important to look at those grade levels as sort of a sign of what is to come. Moving forward through the data, I think this is a really helpful table to look at in terms of where are residents of District 20 going to school. We're going to touch on this in just a bit, but it's important to note that District 20 is a school district that, particularly at the elementary school level, has the highest retention of its residents in all of Brooklyn. At the middle school level, retention is among the highest as well. It's quite high, so many of the residents of District 20 attend district schools in District 20. There are no charter schools in District 20 also, which is a contributing factor as well. But when we look at the residents, so this is the residents that are school-age children, aged kindergarten through 12th grade, we see that the number of residents was increasing up to a point around that 2019-20 school year. And then during the pandemic, we saw a pretty rapid decline in the number of school-aged residents living in District 20. What we're really interested in and observing right now and over the coming years is, do we see this number start to trickle back up as families potentially return to District 20, or does this trend continue to decline, or does it stagnate? So really interested to see this as when we talk about increasing enrollment, one of the things that you need to understand is that there is a finite pool of children to pull from to attend schools. So if the number of school-age children is declining, you can then assume that it might be quite likely that the number of students enrolled in school decline as well. So when we look at where this decline was being felt, we do see that there was a decline in district enrollment. So District 20, students that were enrolled in District 20 saw some decline over that same time period. We saw the number of children enrolled in schools, district schools outside of District 20 was pretty stagnant, small increases year over year of students enrolling outside of District 20, and these are K through 12 students. And then in terms of District 75 and charter schools, this is a fairly small percentage of the District 20 student population of residents. And there wasn't many big shifts in that student population over that time period. And then this is another helpful tool that we can look to determine what the picture is in terms of students that are leaving district schools. So this graph is discharges from public schools. So one thing that the Department of Education tracks, that district schools track, is if a student leaves a district school, they track the reason for which they left that school. So what we see here is that the number of discharges was pretty stable year to year in the 3 years that sort of led up to the pandemic. And then we see this quite sharp increase in students leaving district schools during that time. And then when we look to this bottom graph here, we see these different causes. So we have students leaving to schools outside of New York City, students attending non-public schools within New York City, charter schools, homeschools, etc. But when we look at this graph, what we see as the biggest spike, which is sort of mirrors this spike in total discharges, is families leaving to schools outside of New York City. So what we saw was a lot of families that were previously living within District 20 were leaving to either different cities or different states and then enrolling their child in school there during the pandemic. Once again, we did see school-age residents decrease, which is sort of what's represented in this graph as well. And very interested to see what this graph might look like next year and in subsequent years to determine what that trend might look like going forward. Moving ahead, like I said, going to do the highlights in tonight's presentation. This is sort of what I was getting at earlier, which is where are District 20 residents enrolled? So District 20 has among the highest retention rates in the borough at both the elementary and middle school level. So we see 91% of District 20 residents are attending District 20 district schools. And then we have 5% of students that are traveling to districts outside of District 20 for elementary school. And then 3% of students are attending charter schools, which would mean that they're traveling outside of the district, as there aren't elementary charter schools within District 20. And when we look to middle school retention, we see 78% of District 20 middle school students are attending in-district middle schools, and then 20% are attending middle schools that are district schools outside of District 20. Jumping ahead once more, I think that when we talk about space, space is something that... Sorry.
Call from different dial.
Someone mute yourself, please. Someone's on. Go ahead.
Thank you. So when we look at this, when we talk about District 20, one of the main things that we talk about is space. As I mentioned earlier, District 20 is one of the more crowded districts in the city. It's a lot of students, not a lot of excess space within the district. So this graph here represents demand versus capacity in District 20. So what we see here, kind of just to talk through what we're looking at, is this lighter line here with these plotted points represents historical enrollment. So these are how many elementary school students were enrolled in District 20 elementary schools over the past couple of years. This is what actually happened. When we look at this shaded area into the future, we see a projection of what we think enrollment will look like over the coming school years. And as you can see here, there is sort of a pretty wide range of what we project in terms of enrollment going forward. And this is the result of course, over the past couple of school years, we've had, pretty abrupt and extreme events that have kind of hit us as a society, which drastically changed the picture of enrollment within the district. So going forward, it's difficult to predict with a lot of accuracy what enrollment will look like. So we have this fairly wide range of outcomes for what enrollment is likely to look like within District 20 elementary schools. This bottom line here represents projected capacity in District 20 elementary schools, or another way to think of this is just how many seats there will be in District 20 elementary schools. And as you can see, in 2024 specifically, this line is expected to increase as we have many capacities that we're going to talk through in some detail later, but definitely in much more detail over the coming weeks and months with you all that are projected to go online in 2024. So there's many spaces in District 24 that will be added to this capacity starting in 2024. And what's important to note here is that right now there is more enrollment, so there's more demand in District 20 than there are available seats. But when we look into the future, we do see that projected enrollment and that amount of capacity getting closer as the coming years go on, which means, which is a good thing. That essentially means that students will be able to be served by their schools within capacity. Right now, there's schools are still able to serve the students that are enrolled at their schools, but those schools, many of them are quite crowded. So in middle school, similar picture. Same sort of markers here on the graph of historical enrollment, projected enrollment into the future, and then capacity. We also have some capacity projected to go online in 2024. A lot of that capacity is TBD in terms of what exactly it will look like, but that's something that we're excited to collaborate with the community on. But we do see that enrollment has a pretty broad range of projections at the middle school level in District 20, but capacity falls somewhere between that future projection. So there's a range of outcomes, but with efficient programming, District 20 middle school students will definitely be accommodated at the capacity that exists. So moving forward, wanted to talk through this page here, which discusses class sizes or average class sizes in District 20. So this information is helpful. As I'm sure many of you are aware, we did receive a question from the council regarding the class size bill that was recently signed by the governor, which sort of, the intention of that bill is to limit the class sizes at particular markers. The limits on class sizes is actually quite similar to these Blue Book max capacities that you see here. Those are the capacities, the class sizes that are in the actual law itself. But the update that we have to share with you today is that we are still in a bit of a waiting period to see exactly how that bill will be implemented. But as soon as we hear something, we'll definitely be in touch. And we'll definitely work through that. As mentioned, as you can see in these tables here, we see the District 20 average class size in this top graph or top chart here. And then below it, we see the Brooklyn average class size. And what you'll notice is District 20 does on average, across most grade levels, have higher average class sizes than the borough average. So, that's just something to note there. But like I said, we'll definitely be in touch as we do have more information regarding the implementation of the class size bill, which right now we're still in a bit of a waiting period on. Here, this is an important slide here, as what's really exciting is the new capacities that are slated to come online in District 20 over the coming years. As you can see, 2024 is a big year for District 20, where there are many capacities slated to come online. And with new space, the hope is that we will be able to utilize that space to meet district needs and to work with you all to determine those needs, determine the best utilization for this space, and to alleviate some of the deficits that currently exist within the district, as we identify them. So among those deficits are District 75 capacity, particularly at the middle school, at the high school level, which we're going to speak on in just a moment. But also just space. As I mentioned, space is such a resource for schools, and particularly in District 20, where there is some overutilization of buildings. So with these new spaces that you see on the screen right now, we're really excited to collaborate and to determine best uses of these spaces going forward, and to like I said, alleviate some of those needs that are so pressing in the district.
Perry, can I jump in just really quickly with one note? Thank you.
Sure.
If you all note the section that says capital plan funded seats. This is important as well, and something we engage with constantly in conversation with you all and also with the School Construction Authority. There are 3 individual sub-districts that comprise District 20 as a community school district based on available need and overcrowding and ways that we can increase capacity. The capital plan is funded by sub-district. The biggest takeaway here is that all 3 of your sub-districts still have identified and funded need. You'll see seats completed or in progress if we have some of those capacities coming online. Whereas in one of the sub-districts, we don't have an identified new capacity yet. But the takeaway here again is that, we want to continue our exploration with the School Construction Authority around where we can either find parochial schools or buildings that are available to become DOE spaces where we can add additions or annexes to existing school buildings, particularly at the elementary or middle school level, and where we can just build new buildings, which is challenging because of just a physical available space in the district that's limited regardless. So, good news that there's still funded and identified need, but this is the driver behind our conversations around where we can also add to this list of new capacity and hopefully see more school buildings as well.
For sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Jamie. So moving forward, just wanted to touch on a few more points in the data summary before jumping on to getting into some other data requests that we received from the council. So this is the District 75 need in District 20. So what we're looking at here is the bars to the left represent District 75 residents, or, in other words, residents, students that live within District 20 that qualify for a District 75 seat. And then the bar to the right represents capacity to serve those students in District 75 programming within the district. So what we see is that at the elementary school level, there is not currently a deficit of District 75 seats, but it's quite close. And it's sort of, that sort of varies year by year. So definitely something we want to monitor to see how that trend progresses. At the middle school and high school levels, there's quite few District 75 seats within the district. And there are many students that qualify for District 75 programming. So, for those of you that, aren't aware, District 75 programming serves students with special needs, some of the, the highest need students in, the Department of Education. And, these programs are, very important. Priority of our office is to open District 75 programming that is, within, a reasonable distance from the students that qualify for that programming. So definitely looking out for opportunities to meet that need, but as mentioned, space is such a resource within District 20 that we do look towards those capacities that are opening up going forward to potentially meet some of that need. And with that, I want to stop sharing this window, and I'm going to actually share a different screen really quick. Finding it. Okay, so you all should see a screen now. It's like an Excel file. So wanted to talk through some additional data. At our last meeting with the council, where we heard from you all about sort of your journeys, as well as some of your biggest identified needs and priorities for planning, as well as since then, we've received some emails from the council as well as the CEC president with some questions. So we wanted to kind of follow up on some of those requests, as well as, answer any additional questions you might have regarding some questions that we received. So among those questions, we did receive one question regarding programming for multilingual learners. So those come in the form of dual language programming, as well as some other programming that meets those students' needs. So this on this screen are district schools with bilingual programs. and it has some information regarding demographics as well as utilization at those programs. We're happy to share this information with you all after this call tonight, and send this your way. But this is more of a just a list of programs that provide this type of programming, and then towards the right you see the utilization at those organizations. So kind of the level of capacity that they've reached at each of those programs. This next tab here dives a little bit deeper into those programs. So what we see in this first table here is English language learners enrolled in District 20 by level. So what we see is that this is also kind of just more crude, numeric representation of that, where we see, English language learners compared to not English language learners in District 20. And then English language learners based on retention. So what is the retention rate for English language learners by grade level? So we see in K to 5, 90% of English language learners that are that reside in District 20 remain in the district. 10% attend schools in other districts. This is pretty comparable to the overall trend for students. In middle school, we see about 3/4 of English language learners remain in District 20 that reside there. Also comparable to the trend in retention, for students overall in District 20. And then at the high school level, it's more of an even split in terms of students that reside in District 20 that are English language learners that attend school within the district. But we do know that students that are, high school students, as students get older, they're more likely to travel to schools outside of the district than they are at younger ages. This table at the bottom here tackles English language learners by level and the district that they're enrolled in. So we see that for residents in K to 5, this just sort of tallies out the number of students that are enrolled in District 20 compared to different districts, as well as charter schools and District 75 programs. So, this is, like I said, happy to share this with you all after this meeting, but this sort of tallies out for those students that might leave District 20 that are, English language learners, which districts are they attending school within? And then lastly, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Superintendent Preto, if you had any additional thoughts. I know we've started conversations about the ELL data that Perry is presenting, as well as additional programs in the district, whether that's bilingual programs, dual language programming, et cetera. If there's anything you wanted to add, at this time, otherwise we can kind of update this group as we have firmer plans for additional programs.
Thanks, Jamie. I mean, this data continues to reinforce the need for us at the district to explore the establishment of additional bilingual programs. We are constantly in communication with Division of Multilingual Learners, and we do have on my new expanded district team the Director for Multilingual Learners, Dr. Perez Medina. And so part of the work that we've been doing, which will carry over since I came on as superintendent, will be to explore where there are sites that exist that have the potential to establish new programs, both transitional bilingual or dual language in the languages where it makes sense and is feasible for students, and also look at new capacities and see the potential and possibility to provide bilingual programming in grades that we currently do not. One of the deficit areas in the district around programming is middle school and bilingual programs. We currently don't have the offerings in middle school, so that's something that we're looking closely at, where we can look at existing schools and sites that have potential for establishing programs where it makes sense, as well as looking at that potential in new capacities.
Thank you.
Thanks, Superintendent. And one more request that we received that I wanted to touch on was a request to provide some information and to do a bit of an analysis on travel distance. So the distance that students at the middle school level are traveling to attend school. So first, I want to just sort of offer a word of caution in analyzing this data that, this is a pretty extensive task that, we want to kind of determine the distance that students travel. There's a lot that goes into that, but the determination of this, is, or the conclusions that are drawn from this, there is a bit of a risk in, making any broad conclusions from this type of data, which I'll get at in just a second. But so what I want to kind of discuss here is the way that we kind of went through this data, and, our analytics team at our office, took the time to determine students that are living within a certain zone, how far are they traveling to get to their zone school? So at the middle school level, there are both zoned and open admission options, or unzoned school level that are shaded, represent zones where there are students that are traveling over a mile to get to school, to their zone school, I should say. Now, what's important to note is, as you can see just visually, District 20 is quite large, and there are some zones within District 20 that are quite expansive. So what this might actually be measuring is there are some fairly large zones within District 20 at the middle school level. And what's also important to note is there may be additional students that are attending unzoned middle schools that might be, close to home, that might not be captured in this type of analysis. So what's kind of picked out piece by piece up here is, travel distance to school. And then what, this tries to get at is retention for grade 6 for those schools. So, an analysis that you can, try to draw from this is, there are some schools where students do travel greater than a mile to get to school, as you can see here. And there's not necessarily a clean trend in terms of those schools where students are traveling over a mile always have lower retention than others. It's sort of a mixed bag. But obviously you all are sort of living that experience on the ground. You might have different insights that we might be missing in this data, which is definitely something we'd be interested in. But I think this is helpful to look at, but not necessarily a complete picture. But it does get at, for those middle school students that are living within a zone, are they attending that zone school, and are they traveling more than a mile to get to that zone school? So hope this is helpful, but also want to open the floor for questions either about this data that I just discussed here, either the ELL data or the travel distance data, and also open up for questions regarding the data summary and trends that we discussed earlier. So I will stop sharing my screen and happy to jump back to sharing if anyone has any specific questions about data.
Harry, actually, could you keep sharing your screen?
Sure, I'll pull it back up. I think there was some feedback on the microphone, but.
Are you muted now? You guys are muted. Okay. It should be better now. Perry, this is really interesting. Thank you. And the whole presentation is great. And I always enjoy when you guys come present. What is in the column zoned, I guess column J, or KLM, the NAs, what is, why is it NA for some of those columns, like for the retention or zone at middle school level?
So NA, sorry about that, didn't mean to cut you off. So if there's an NA in a column, my understanding is that represents a school where the admissions method for middle school is open rather than zoned. So what our data here is getting at is kind of whether students are, so if you were going to look at something like zoned retention, it would necessarily have to be a zoned admissions method school. But there are some schools here that are, for example, this is a 6 through 8 school. 180 Seal Academy, which has the ES grades have zoned admission, but the middle school grades are open admission. So for example, NA here just means that the middle school grades don't have zoned admissions method.
Okay. And then, yeah, I mean, I think it's just to sort of reiterate and sort of state the obvious, and maybe is, you know, the column grade 6 zone retention. That is the percentage of zoned students in grade 6 that actually attend the school. And so lower means, you know, they're going somewhere else. The higher means they're staying at the zone middle school. It's a statement of obvious, but I just want to confirm that's what that means, right?
Yeah, I want to call out though, I think for middle school, when we see schools with a lot of different admissions programs, particularly at the middle school level, we can be thinking about students that could be zoned to a school, but perhaps they're in like a superintendent's program that has a different admissions method. When we're focused kind of exclusively on zone retention, we're really looking at elementary schools because it shows us that students living in that geographical zone that have priority to that school through that zone are choosing that option. So, you know, definitely important to focus on here, but I want to also reiterate that A, there's other methods in which students can kind of attend these schools, but also B, we see sometimes greater travel distance at middle school, whereas someone in elementary school might not, you know, be able to travel across the different district for a different option. But in middle school, this is pretty typical. We also have many districts across the city, and particularly in Brooklyn, that don't have middle school zones anymore or don't operate with them. So, you know, this is a little bit of a unique case here where we're having some students like still zoned at middle school attend their zone school. But the nuance there is that, you know, it looks very differently for elementary school students.
Okay, got it. Thank you. And then that last column, pretty straightforward, I think. Numbers, a mile, less than a mile, and more than a mile. Okay, got it. Very interesting. Does anyone have any questions on this one? I have a few more, but I'll see if anyone else has any questions, or I can keep asking. Just some questions on the ELL data, and maybe this is for superintendent. You know, since I've started doing this, we've every time I sort of think about our ELL programs, I'm always asking, what's the supply and demand? And, you know, at a high level, this is good high level data, but it really has to be done like a school by school on this level. And what you were talking about is kind of right along the lines of the stuff I've always wondered about, like where can we potentially establish programs? How close are we to actually getting something on paper and getting some, you know, some kind of analysis going? Yes.
That's a great question. I think one of the challenges with establishing bilingual programs in the middle school is programmatically, because of the requirement in licensing for teaching to be content specific. It's one of the big challenges to be able to effectively create a program that not just has the bilingual certified staff, but also bilingual certified staff in at least two of the content areas. ELA, social studies, math, science, the predominance of the middle school program. In elementary school, it's a little bit easier because the classroom teacher teaches all subjects on the grade level. So from a staffing perspective, it's not as much of a challenge to get certified staff to be able to teach children in effectively lower levels, because anybody will work a teacher who's teaching children in both English and the other language that we have. And that's one thing. I think something else that is a dynamic at play here is with bilingual programs, you'll see that there's far more children who are English learners in elementary school than in middle school. One of the dynamics that happens here is that most children enter into the system in kindergarten and first grade as young people, and they spend a good majority of their time in classes, and one of the requirements for second learners is for them to take pass the access lab. Once they pass the ISIS lab, they're no longer considered English language learners on a chart like this. So you'll see that the numbers are much lower middle school because a lot of our children in our schools have a good track record supporting children in taking and passing the ISIS lab. However, we still do have a good number of students who enter into the system in the later grades. So you'll see that while there is a smaller number of students who are English language learners in middle school versus elementary school, the need for services to support them and the support services are mandated by our state law, Department of Health. So we are required by state law to provide English language learners as well as former students who have passed the ISIS lab with instruction by certified English language teachers or bilingual certified teachers.
And I was just reminded that when one of us is speaking into the mic, have your computer unmuted for the best. Can you just say that again?
So we can see you.
Sorry. So you're welcome to.
Did you get to hear that though, at least? Okay.
I do a follow-up, David, so you can be giving the mic right back to you. So, for example, on the data that
We're just hold it lower.
See if they can hear.
Okay. So for the data that Perry is showing right here, David, I'm picking one cell for no particular reason. English language learners enrolled, grades 6 through 8, 1,933. Are there other students who are not enrolled because they can't find a program in their school? And if so, what's that number?
No. So any child that enrolls.
Yeah. No, on there. Or just unmute, David. Just unmute your computer. Yeah.
Okay, so no. So the answer is no. Any child who enrolls in a DOE school is mandated by law to be provided the services. So at minimum, children will receive English as a new language services by a certified ENL teacher. That's at minimum. So any school that doesn't have a bilingual program, meaning that children are receiving instruction in both English and their native language, are still receiving English as a new language services, meaning that they're still like that's the minimum requirement. So any school that doesn't offer the bilingual program offers ENL services.
And are the ENL teachers, is it a lower threshold for certification than a full?
No, not at all. It's just a different approach. Bilingual education supports the development to some degree of both English and the native language, whereas ENL services are purely focused on the development of English language.
So you just said we had a problem finding qualified staff, but you're only talking about expanding. The only problem is finding qualified staff isn't expanding. Are you saying we're fully staffed on all these classes at this point? Like
In ENL and in bilingual programs, we are staffed. I would say that staffing, especially since the pandemic, has been a tremendous issue. Finding bilingual certified staff has always been a unique challenge above and beyond staffing for Common Branch or for ELA, social studies, your more traditional subjects. And we are always looking for ways to partner with universities to recruit and retain staff who are certified bilingual.
we do not have a staffing deficit. You mentioned ENL and bilingual, also transitional.
So transitional bilingual and dual language classes are both taught by bilingual certified teachers.
Okay.
Transitional bilingual and dual language are two different approaches to bilingual education.
And again, I just keep coming back to this because you mentioned at the start of the conversation how hard it is to find good staff, but then we're fully staffed.
The challenge in middle school is, so for an elementary school teacher, the Common Branch is the license that the grand majority of our elementary classroom teachers have. So for a Common Branch teacher to earn an extension to their license, a bilingual extension, is fairly, there's a lot of programs and support from the DOE to support Common Branch teachers who are fluent in another language than English to become bilingual certified in Common Branch. So the majority of bilingual staff that we do have, and this has been my experience citywide, but in District 20, the grand majority are bilingual Common Branch teachers, bilingual teachers who teach elementary school classes.
Are these classes, do we have like class size, average class size on these? Because it just strikes me as, I'm guessing some of these classes are pretty large. Like I can't help but think that if these teachers are so hard to find, and we have a lot of English language learners in the district, do the classes tend to be larger in size?
It depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the language, and it depends on the site, and it depends on the school and the enrollment patterns.
Yeah, okay.
But I wouldn't be able to speak knowledgeably about the numbers beyond that.
And the NICE, sorry, the acronym is the NICESLAT?
NICESLAT, the New York State
Do we publish data on that?
English as a Second Language Achievement Test.
Do we publish the
Yes, we do.
ratings on that?
Yes,
Okay.
the NICESLAT data is made public.
How has that data been trending in the last few years?
I can prepare a presentation.
during the pandemic?
I can
Sure.
I can prepare data presentation for our work in the
Yeah.
NICESLAT.
That would be great, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Just a quick question back to Jamie and Perry. Any update on the site? There was a site that the SCA purchased probably over a year ago at this point. It's a former bank in Bay Ridge, Santander Bank on Fifth Ave. I didn't see that on your list of potential sites. Was it in the sub-district site where it's a potential longer term project?
Yeah, so I don't actually know if it's calculated as seats in progress in that funded sub-district. We would need to check with the SCA, but typically the acquisition process leading into their public review process is quite lengthy. We don't see the building on what we call our building completions report, which is that list you saw on the screen, until there's like a projected opening date. They've passed the public review. So it would probably still be, captured as like a TBD. They're working through that process.
Okay.
So the first answer, I guess, is yes, we're working with them to go through those steps, but no, we don't have it finalized enough to kind of capture with an opening date.
Okay, I know it's gone through the public review process. That actually happened during the last started during the last CEC term.
Yeah, so then they'll hire designers and architects to work on like the physical plans of the building. And then we typically see, once that's underway, it's different in every building based on what kind of work they need to do, if it's existing or not, but it could be a 4 to 6 year runway of when we see that building open. And we typically get 4 to 5 years of runway on the building completions report when we know like a confirmed date and number of seats, which we're not at that place yet.
Okay, thanks. And on the class size bill, understood that it's not, you guys are at early stages. We don't know much. And I know that if I'm not mistaken, it can be amended, correct? Up until implementation next fall. Is that your understanding? The actual bill, the language can be amended, and there's going to be a process in place to do that?
I'm not familiar with the process for amendments. We can check with our legal team, Perry or Dr. Preto, if you all know something else. I'm not familiar though with what happens next in terms of rollout amendments, processes for different districts, but.
Okay.
Yeah, my understanding is that the Department of Education as a system will first create a plan for addressing the class size bill. That would be the next step.
Okay.
And I do see that Representative Swanson from the BP's office has his hand up, perhaps in related to this question or otherwise.
Go ahead.
Yes. I was just going to flag that my understanding of the read of the actual legislative text is that, similar to what the superintendents mentioned, that each, and really, again, the language is school district of 1 million or more, right? So just specifically New York City, DOE has to propose said plan for the legislature or the entity, to review And then based off of that, if it's in alignment with meeting their goal and their target, then funds will be allocated. The only thing that's kind of left up to the discretion is really for, is some components were really for the UFT and DOE to hash out. So more specifically, like special education classes is actually kind of carved out in that legislation. There's no specific number, rather, again, for it to be decided through collective bargaining and some other pieces. I can also, share you guys out some notes just so you can also understand the legislative reading of the text. But there's really, if amendments are to be made, which highly doubt, again, that would have to happen at the state level. So we're going to probably assume that this is what it is, and rather New York City has to just show, again, in good faith effort, and then that the state can amend funding, right, to kind of match that target and make sure that they're in alignment. There's also some punitive measures if the district is not meeting its goal or the plan is not sufficient, which then they have to create like a remediation plan, and funding can be held and things like that. So the text is pretty lengthy, but that's just my general read. I do not have my notes in front of me, so I do apologize if there's any, but I can follow up with you all.
No worries. Thanks, Donovan. But again, and I guess the question, as far as planning goes, I'm just curious, and this might be a conversation for another time, but we've got 5 years to phase it in, but it applies to the city as a single district. It's not every district has to be in compliance 20% each year with the class size. Is that your understanding?
That is my understanding, that it's the entire district. So it's really up to DOE on how they want to go about doing that. And again, we won't know more. There is supposed to be also a public period within that text that's already outlined. So DOE does have to have some kind of public engagement on that. But again, the language is broad enough that DOE has some flexibility there, but there has to be a public engagement period. I want to say the text says 30 days, but again, I do not have my notes right in front of me.
Anyways, thanks. Okay. Thank you so much, Donovan, for chiming in there. Just moving on quickly on the Nathan site. What is the timing now for programming that, for determining sort of, what are the next steps on Nathan's, I guess I'm wondering.
I'm going to turn it to Superintendent Preto to talk a little bit about new capacities when we have something opening in 2024, as we do at Nathan's. We are approaching the time where we would want to start having some community conversations and thinking, collaboratively about admissions and programming. Certainly, don't want to overstep, so I'll turn it to the superintendent, but we're coming up, I would say, in the next 6 months where it becomes appropriate to start making some more concrete kind of decisions around the school.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would expect in my presentation, we're going to be talking about admissions. So I know that the admissions cycle was a topic that we had to engage in some processes and make some decisions on. So we're looking at, as soon as that is settled for middle school and our work, we would start the process of engaging around the visioning for the upcoming capacities, including Nathan's.
Thanks, David. And then last question, I think, right now for, two more questions for ODP. Just always been talked about in District 20, and I've been told different things by some individuals in the room, and I'm kind of curious with all of us here, charters in District 20, we don't have any. What's the exact reason? Because I've heard different things and I've been questioned about this, and I'm just want to get the story straight once and for all.
I can share kind of broadly. There are two ways in which, and I don't want to speak to the process of how charter schools are authorized, because that's absolutely not my work. I can talk about citing. Charter schools per a state law can request co-located public space, which kind of answers your question, right, around the lack of available excess space in the district. So if they were looking to be co-located in a DOE building, then they would go through that process. There are districts that have available excess space in existing buildings sufficient enough to house a new school. That has not been the avenue in District 20, so we haven't seen any requests for that. The second avenue would be is for the school to acquire private space and to lease their own space outside of DOE buildings. I think for the same reason as you can also imagine space is a premium, whether it's a private space, a parochial school, or a DOE building. So we just haven't had those requests as feasible, just given space and lack of space.
Got it. And how about David, maybe, or as far as getting approval at the state level, I've heard we don't get approval here because we're a performing school district. Is that true? If you are a district that's classified as performing, this is just what I've been told, you can't get approval for charters. Correct? Okay. All right. Thanks. Yeah, go for it, Kevin.
So in the past 2 years, let's say, do we have anybody apply for, asking to set up a private charter school in this district?
Not that I'm aware of. I've not been made aware of any requests to start a charter school in District 20.
Thank you.
I believe we had a charter school applied maybe 2 terms ago. It was a Greek school, and they were speaking about possibly using the Angel Guardian site. And I think that they pulled their request and decided to go to Staten Island because there was, I think, more community and political opposition than they were prepared to deal with.
Yeah, Vita, that's a good point. And just to point out, some charter schools that are requesting specifically public co-located space will preference 7 or 10 different districts, right? So they can see where available space exists. And so nothing is stopping them from saying, I want to open a school in co-located space in District 20. It's never able to advance beyond that kind of initial request for space because there just simply isn't a building that has available space like that.
And last question, Jamie and Perry, one of my questions was, in our district, obviously there's, and David definitely, I'm sure will weigh in here, but we have a number of gifted and talented programs throughout the district. And there's some parts of the district that are not served by gifted and talented programs. I was sort of openly just kind of musing about whether we could set up a sort of a kind of a mapping where we have a number of areas, maybe a few different elementary schools, and one would host a program that could sort of pull kids from around that area. Maybe you don't have enough support for one program in every school in a particular area, but maybe you could pull together and get enough for a program in one area. And that was kind of a planning question I had as well. Is there any kind of thoughts you guys have on that? Or David?
So, definitely want to let, Superintendent Preto weigh in as well. But I think that, as I mentioned, over the coming months, when we think about, these new sites as well as current sites, we definitely want to, hear from you all, on the CEC and in the broader community around, programming that you're looking for that might not be, available to you, whether it's because of distance or other factors, and meeting those needs where we can. But regarding the specific requests, want to let Superintendent Preto weigh in to see if there's anything more specific we can offer.
I don't think you're I'm muted. Yep.
I would say that since I've come on as superintendent, one of the defining features of District 20 has been how overutilized the spaces are and how there is demand for both elementary and middle school seats. So I think from a new capacity standpoint and looking to establish programs, I think the first thing has been where is there a seat need for all children in elementary or middle school? Then within that area, we've spoken a lot about special education. We've spoken a lot about the needs to provide mandated services for English language learners. We want to make sure that capacities that we bring on are also addressing the needs of students who we have that we are required by law to provide services for. And So I think that with regard to the question of gifted and talented programs existing in these spaces, that's something that we can definitely, have a conversation about. It's not something that I feel like from a numbers, mandates, and requirement standpoint, that is something that we have thought about in terms of how these capacities would be utilized.
I strongly encourage you to think about it from that perspective as well. I think we can serve all types of students. Jamie Perry, I think we are, is that any more questions for Jamie Perry?
Yeah, I do see, Steve. I see Ellen McHugh has her hand up, and also just want to, pose to anyone else on the council that any questions or thoughts from the day today. Curious if anyone has any thoughts, or if after hearing the data presentation today, if there's any new needs that you've identified that you maybe weren't aware of, or if there's any needs that you've previously kind of spoken about that you maybe saw represented in the data. Curious to just hear any thoughts from folks on the council.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Ellen. I do see your hand up. Go ahead if you can unmute.
If I'm getting, hi, how are you? If I'm getting this right, there are 357 residents of the district at the elementary school level, and there are 368 seats, more or less. At the middle school level, there's 125 residents, but there's only 20 seats available. Has there been any, is Nathan's going to provide any seats for District 75? Or are there any other schools being cited or planned for the district that would help balance out this anomaly in numbers? It seems kind of unfortunate that there's so few numbers. I've been around a long time, so I'm just going to repeat. 227 lost its D75 program. 204 lost its D75 program. 104 lost part of its D75 program without any notification to families or parents or, caregivers. And it seems like this might be the result of that disparity in including families and caregivers in deciding where the district wants to go. I mean, people, like myself, I had a child in a District 75 program, but I had two other children. It was a battle royal to keep my oldest son in the district so that at least the three kids would be in one district. And I didn't have to go from pillar to post to pick up, drop off, be involved in, or otherwise participate in parent activities at schools. So which is the long way around, and I'll get off my soapbox, but it's the long way around of asking, has anybody surveyed the 357, the parents of the 357 residents who are being served in the district to see if they would prefer to stay in the district?
So Ellen, we did announce last spring how in the Nathan site as well as in the lease space at Our Lady of Guadalupe would both hold D75 seats for middle school students. I want to say 72 seats at Nathan's and approximately capacity for 120 at the Our Lady of Guadalupe site. So we're projecting that in 2024, the combination of the D75 seats that are located at these two sites are going to satisfy the seat deficit and demand for D75 seats for middle school students who are residents of District 20. And we were happy to see that there were going to be seats on both the kind of western portion of the district as well as kind of the southeastern portion of the district. We're also going to have 96 additional sites, 96 D75 seats in the Angel Guardian Home site, which is for elementary school students. So in 2024, we will be opening capacity for potentially a few hundred D75 seats in the district.
I'm going to beat a dead horse. I don't believe in having the kids separate and segregated, but that's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Addressing the need is terrific, and thank you. But if they're in segregated and separated sites in Angel Guardian or in Our Lady of Guadalupe, you know, they're separate, they're segregated. That's 300 kids, more or less, 200 kids. My math is not great. 200 kids segregated from the community. It's a different philosophy. I'm glad that you have said that there would be an increase in seats. It's a philosophical approach.
I just want to make sure I understand. Segregated how?
They're in self-contained buildings.
So the Angel Guardian building is not a self-contained site.
It's not a self-contained site?
No.
No.
The Our Lady of Guadalupe is a self-contained site, and we had several years of conversation around how to use that space to meet all of the district needs. We absolutely hear that providing inclusive spaces is a priority, but also serving students in the district and not having students on a bus for hours and hours each day was a bigger priority. So for that kind of purpose and to meet that very urgent need, it did not make sense to turn that capacity over for any other use by the district other than to serve District 75 students. But with that said, the Angel Guardian site and the Nathan site are inclusive, and that remains a goal, I think, overall as well for future sites.
That's right. When we first looked at the Our Lady of Guadalupe site, we first looked at it with the lens of how it could cite an inclusive program that supported both District 75 and community school students, but the size was restrictive, and being able to create a program to offer to students that both were in District 75 as well as in community school setting, and also satisfy the need for middle school seats, which was the overwhelming need.
Thank you.
And we have we'll take two more questions for the Office of District Planning. We have our DPAC Chair, Paulette Healy, and then our President's Council President, Tamara Stern, both have their hands up. Paulette, I think you were first.
Hi, Jamie. Hi, Perry. It's good to see you guys. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I'm facilitating fair student funding listening sessions at the same time. So, so I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Ellen was saying. I mean, you know, it's great that we have these buildings opening up in 2024, but the need has already been established, and our children are now waiting, you know, another year.
Yeah.
Sorry, was somebody else talking? Okay, sorry about that. So, you know, I just wanted to elevate, you know, we have an amazing ACES program at 205 where you guys are, and they're only going to graduate onto middle school, and we don't have a middle school site for ACES programs. So, you know, take that into consideration when we're looking at the programming of the new sites that we're looking at the Nathan site and at the at the Angel Guardian side. And then also, you know, let's look also at the other specialized programs that are over populated right now within our school system. We have only one NEST program at the Touts location that is over capacity. And that's only K through 5. So again, they will need to go into District 15, District 17, or District 21 in order to continue their middle school education. Same thing with our Horizon site over at 164. Those kids are going to graduate out at 5th grade, and they'll have nowhere to go but District 15 or 17 and so on if they continue to need a Horizon site. We have ACES programs in our high schools, which is fantastic. We have AIMS programs in our elementary school. Let's think about how we can provide more capacity with these specialized programs, because the need is there. And, you know, with our 3K, we know that the 3Ks have not gotten their related services. Special education seats for 3K is still deficit. I think last count was 800 seats across the city. I don't know what the actual number is in our district, because when we have these meetings, unfortunately 3K enrollment numbers are not available. And that does help us figure out, enrollment projections because they eventually have to go to kindergarten. So with that being said, I just, like Jamie, you and I talk all the time, and I think it's time that we need to check in. So after all this fair student funding stuff kind of slows down a bit, let's get together and game plan out what it needs to look like going forward.
I'd love that. Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Paula, I really appreciate the feedback, and on ASD Nest and Horizon offerings for middle school students. It's definitely an area in the district where we need to be looking to consider for the addition of these programs. We do offer an ACES program for middle school students. It's co-located and housed in the Krista McAuliffe School at IS 187. So we do have middle school students who start in elementary school in the district at 205 and can articulate up to middle school at 187.
Okay, well then that needs to be advertised to our families, and the IEP teams that are helping guide with the transition needs to be able to have that information as well, because I've lived in this district for 15 years. It's the first time ever hearing that there's an ACES program at McAuliffe.
Thanks. Next speaker, or next questioner for Tamara.
Hi. Actually, thanks for that information. I had no idea McAuliffe had a ACES program either. Thank you, Jamie and Perry. Jamie, it's good to see you again. It's been a few years. I will be, if you guys could put your information, your emails in the chat, I would like to reach out to you, in regards of for President's Council. One of the questions that I have is regarding how does enrollment get the specific number, targeted number that you guys have for each school? Because the number that you given to the schools that I'm part of the PTA for, we exceeded those numbers. And what happened is we're like hundreds of students over. So because of that, and because of the loss in funding, we now have to, help those kids. You know what I mean? And we don't have the funding capacity for that. And it's really been an issue. So how do you get the exact number? And it's not just the schools that I'm a part of. I've been hearing this, from other schools in the city. So like, I think one of the concerns that many of us have is, how do you gauge the numbers? And then what do you do when the numbers don't match up to what, the students that are actually end up coming to the school? Because as you said before, like District 20, all our schools have been overutilized and they've been overcrowded for years, and they continue to get overcrowded because we have a number of people moving into our district because of the amazing programs that all of our schools have, from kindergarten, from 4K all the way to high schools. So like, how do we, because I know the numbers are going to go up, because now everybody's officially back in the building, everybody that moved out are coming back, everybody that take the kids out of private schools, unfortunately they didn't like it, but now they're coming back. So like, how do you really gauge those numbers? Like, what is there a formula? Like, what do you guys do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll preface it by saying I'll turn it to the superintendent to talk about like any budgeting kind of nuance there, because I don't work directly with principals around budgeting, particularly as it relates to enrollment. But I can share, for our data, we look at enrollment in a few different ways. So what you're probably mentioning maybe at the top of that conversation was budget projections, which uses historical information to understand how many students we effectively predict to show up from the summer into the fall. We're now into the fall, so we're using, and we as in, the DOE, we're using live enrollment numbers through a system. We can see exactly how many students are captured in each school, in each class, in each grade of each of those schools. That changes, as you mentioned, pretty significantly when we see kids coming over the counter, or maybe they're just re-registering for school. That usually shakes out and solidifies pretty firmly by the end of this month. So we pull something called unaudited register in October, typically comes out on Halloween or right after. So by early November, we have a snapshot of what we anticipate like firm numbers to look like at each school, because that over-the-counter fluctuation has kind of subsided. And then we publish that more officially in what we call audited register in the spring. And then those cycles start over, but we at any time can see like the exact number of students in live ATS, which is that system we use to check current, moment of enrollment. So, for our planning purposes, we're using all of those different resources. We're making sure to focus on live enrollment or that unaudited enrollment if we notice there's a huge shift from what we budgeted to what we are seeing in schools. But David, would love for you to weigh in on like budgeting challenges or things you're seeing when that number is quite different.
Sure. So overall, with fair student funding formula, schools are budgeted along two windows. One is the October 31st overall register, and then the second is end of January, where our special populations are and the funding that is appropriate to the weights for our special populations, so as English language learners, students with special needs, are factored in as well. So the budgeting process is a year-long one and goes along with the projections of enrollment that are provided across a 3-year span of historical data that we've spoken about, in CEC meetings prior to. So overall, like that's the process. We're not yet at that first window for our schools currently, so I can't speak on how that has impacted our schools yet. But that is something that I can provide an update on, as the year progresses.
Great, thanks. Jamie Perry, I think we thank you for being here as always. And we'll obviously continue a number of these conversations. So very good to have you guys.
Thank you. And we dropped our information in the chat. So Tamara or otherwise, if you want to shoot us an email or, give us a ring there, we can certainly connect offline.
We have it.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jamie. I'll just take
you for having us.
Yep. Thanks, Perry. And before we go to Superintendent Preto's presentation, I just want to put into the chat one more time the speaker sign-up form for public speaking. That's the form you can use, the Google form you can use if you'd like to sign up for public speaking, which will come after Superintendent Preto's presentation and my comments. So David, do you want to go? Sure. You co-host?
No, I got it.
You're good.
Okay, can we see my screen? Great. So good evening, Council, President Stowe, Council members, Principal Mandel, my team, and families and constituents around the district. It's good to be with you all hybridly. So I'm going to share an overview of our New York State exam results from 2022, which were released recently, as well as an overview of Regents results from middle schoolers in the district. I'm going to share some key findings and a quick summary of my listening tour, and then finally give an update on the Chancellor's announcement around the middle school screen admissions process and how we're operating that in District 20. And I want to go, there we go. So I just want to revisit our district-wide priorities and initiatives. And I'll be touching on a couple of those today. One, accelerated and specialized programs, as well as the work that we're doing within the SEAL theory of action. The New York State exam is our primary accountability mechanism to the state, and so we use those results as a starting point to make determinations around need areas and priorities. So specifically within early childhood literacy, but definitely within improvement in math, we're going to see some data points that are going to inform some of the priorities that we have for our students. And I share the Regents data as well as part of like an ongoing conversation around the state of accelerated programming in the district and the opportunities that students across the district are offered in middle school. So what I've done is I've prepared a 3-year overview of our students district-wide in 3 categories. So I've selected the all students category, our students with disabilities and their progress, and then our English language learners. And I've identified the years of, 2018, 2019, and 2022 as the comparison years. Prior to 2018, the New York State exam was administered over a 3-day period, so results aren't comparable to each other from years previous to 2018. And we did not administer the exam in 2020, and due to very low participation rates in 21, the results aren't comparable, so that's why we have these 3 years. So you'll see for the all students category, we had a success in ELA. Our proficiency rates for students who achieved a level 3 or a 4 went up about 4.7%, and that is the highest increase in New York City. So we're really happy about that increase. We dropped in math approximately 7%, which is a drop that is proportionate to the drop in the city. We were not the district with the lowest drop, but we did have a drop in percentage comparable to many other districts, and definitely not the biggest drop in the city. One thing that but obviously this is a data point that we're looking at in terms of a focus for our efforts in the district for improvement in math. Math instruction has not been a focal point of the district for the last several years. There's been a heavy focus on literacy and the advanced literacies framework, and really supporting the literacy development across all content areas. So we're continuing that focus, but also revisiting and prioritizing mathematics instruction. And one of the key levers that we are utilizing to advance the improvement in math is a professional development series across the entire district for the year, training assistant principals in both elementary and middle school in mathematical practices, inventorying, observation, and supporting teachers with both high leverage feedback and identifying professional learning opportunities that match to research-based mathematical practices. So we are really looking to allocate available resources in the district, one of which is a strength of content area in mathematics. We have a few math coaches who are very proficient in both elementary and middle school math instruction, so we're leveraging them to support not just mathematics instruction, observation and feedback support, and development of professional learning plans, but also leadership development capacity. Our students with disabilities had similar, our students with disabilities in literacy actually outgained the all students category. So we had an almost 7% increase in literacy or in ELA for our students with disabilities. There's still a significant gap between the all students category and students with disabilities, but the gain of almost 7% is an incredible achievement, and we're looking to capitalize that and increase on that. As we had a similar dip in mathematics, that's about proportionate or comparable to the dip in the all students category, about 7%. And then with our English language learners, we had an almost 8% increase in ELA, which again, we're really excited about. That's a large increase of our English language learners being proficient in ELA. So we're really attributing that to the district's focus on implementing the hallmarks for advanced literacies, research-based framework and approach to the in literacy instruction. We're continuing that focus and approach, refining it this year with our mantra of all meaning all in the classroom, ensuring that teachers are utilizing classroom protocols and standards-aligned instruction to ensure that all students, including English language learners and students with disabilities, but all students are daily and period by period and learning task by learning task engaged meaningfully in rigorous standards-aligned instruction. So, and finally, I just want to, District 20 had been ranked 5th in the city in ELA in 2019, and we moved up one spot with these gains. So now District 20 is ranked 4th overall in the city in ELA, and we continue to be ranked 4th in mathematics, same ranking as we had in 2019. I'm gonna make this smaller for a second. So here I've just superimposed two graphs that track the performance of students from comparing from 2022 to 2019. So the graph at the top is 2022, the graph at the bottom is 2019, and the bars going across are the performance levels of students in each grade level, starting with 3rd grade at the bottom and 8th grade at the top. And the colors refer to the levels. So on the far left is the dark blue category is the percentage of students scoring level 1. The orange bar is the percentage of students scoring level 2. The gray bar is the percentage of students scoring level 3. The yellow bar is the percentage of students scoring level 4. And then the light blue bar on the right side is the combination of students scoring level 3 and level 4 combined together. And this is the percentage that we use to define the overall percentage of students who are proficient. So we just wanted to be able to demonstrate that at the grade level. And what we've noted is that 5th grade in both categories was the grade that had the lowest levels of performance. We have been discussing around theories around why the 5th grade was the group that was challenged the most. One contextual point is that students who were in 5th grade last year, who are current 6th grade students, were in 3rd grade when the pandemic hit. So they went remote and had a large percentage of 3rd grade, which is a critical year for reading and for math, and all of the 4th grade year in a remote or hybrid or some in-person instruction. So that's something that we're not discounting at all. But in addition to that, we're really looking at how can we look at contextual features that are within our sphere of control and influence that we can use to address and be as proactive as possible to support these students. So for example, in our AP institutes, we're really focusing in on grades 3 and grade 6 to support our assistant principals and our teachers in the highest leveraged mathematics practices. That also is hopefully aligning with the students who are in the greatest need for support. And similarly, with that idea in mind, thinking about the impact of the pandemic, our 3rd graders in ELA are a group that we're really taking a close look at. Our 3rd graders were in kindergarten when the pandemic hit and we went remote, and starting in the second half of kindergarten and going through 1st grade is some of the most important foundational literacy instruction that happens for students. This is where all of the foundational skills around letter sound, phonics, and phonemic awareness all happen at this grade level. So we found that our 2nd graders last year really needed a tremendous amount of support in ramping up those skills. So we are looking very closely at our 3rd graders as well as our 4th graders with this light. And similarly for our students in math starting at the second half of 3rd grade is really where we start digging deep into fractions, and fourth grade and fifth grade as well. So we're really trying to make sure that we have our thumb on the pulse of the standards and the skills that students are really tested on and required of in those years, and making sure that we're applying resources and support proportionally to make sure that we're supporting students in these key areas. This graph is the same graph for math. So you'll see again that our students in the top one is for 2022, and the bottom is for 2019 for comparison. So again, you'll see in fifth grade we had the highest increase of students scoring level 1 on the math exam, and so we're really looking at very closely. Sixth grade was a close second, but we're really looking at those grades in terms of looking at how our core instruction, as well as any intervention services that would be warranted and required, are being targeted for students who are going to need support in order to close that gap with students who are performing below or far below standards.
Sorry, what are the 2 years here? Top one
is 2022.
2022.
And the bottom is 2019. So in 2019, we had 18.7% of students scoring level 1. This year, we had 26.35 students scoring level 1 in fifth grade. Okay. I wanted to share, do you want me to go back, or were you good?
Good. Should we wait for questions till the end, or go as on the different subjects?
This was the state data I was going to share. So if you want to ask questions about the state data, this is a good.
I want to ask questions about your approach on math. I mean, we should be able to do ELA and math, right? Yeah. Hold on, I gotta unmute myself. I just wanted to ask about. Someone else has to mute. Maybe can you mute, David?
Oh yeah.
I just want to ask about the math data. I mean, that's pretty concerning. Simplistically, we should be able to do both, right? We should be able to see the improvements. And I know that the pandemic, it was tougher on math instruction. I think nationwide, you read that, it's clear. Can you just talk about, you've used a number of terms that are not immediately intuitive to myself. You talk about a professional development series for the principals. What are they going to be learning? And you talk about strength of content area. What does that mean? The math coaches, what are they doing? And then I think you mentioned an AP Institute leveraging math, the best mathematics practices. Can you just sort of maybe take that down to sort of the level where we can understand it as sort of, lay people and not sort of professionals?
Sure. So I'm going to go back to the, just to provide like a visual.
So you're absolutely right. So we do need to be able to do both, like support literacy and math at the same time. Historically in District 20, the need around support for getting kind of better at instruction has always led in literacy. Historically, the district had strong growth and overall performance in math. This is the first year of the last several years where the district demonstrated any kind of drop in math. So with regard to the literacy instruction, if you look at the top one here, the use of protocols to ensure all means all, the advanced literacies and HRL framework. So this term advanced literacies refers to a framework and approach to support literacy development. And it's an approach that incorporates, the classroom teacher without any supports or interventions. It also refers to how we approach supporting children who are falling a little bit behind. It refers to how we support children who are English language learners, students with disabilities. So the district has been and will continue to have an approach to supporting the development and improvement for principals, assistant principals, teachers, everybody. It's central to how we go about professional development in the district. With regard to math and improvement in math, what we've done to support this need has been to identify, because we've also had a similar need to support the development of assistant principals in the district as well. Last year, we really focused on principals and their teams, which included assistant principals, but not in every case. So what we wanted to do was be able to not just address the need to support directly the development of assistant principals, but also address the need to support improvement in math. So we organized a structure where our two of our math coaches on the district level have designed and are leading a professional development series where groups of assistant principals are going to visit each other's schools and learn about mathematical practices, like research-based ways to teach math.
I'm just suggesting, Superintendent.
Do I get close? Get close? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Research-based practices for how to teach math that are proven to support all students getting better at math. So we're training assistant principals in what those practices are, how to observe them in the classroom, and then how to go into each other's schools and support the teachers and each other in being able to identify, and based off of how teachers are implementing those practices in math, how to decide what type of professional development or support teachers in that school could use in order to get better at one or another practice for teaching math. It's not an area where the district has had to historically focus, but because of the need, we've decided to create this structure. Kind of in a nutshell, and that's our primary focus with regard to improvement in math. And then with regard to early childhood literacy, what we've the DOE has required all schools across the system to put in place an early childhood foundational literacy program. This is the push for phonics that you've been hearing about. So every school in the city, including District 20, has to have an approved research-based phonics program instituted in their school, and all of our District 20 schools do have that. And so that's something that we're supporting with our AIS coordinators as well. So we have AIS coordinators who are going to support specific schools that can use support in the number of children who are showing cause for concern for need for growth, using the academic screeners, using Acadience and iReady as the primary tools for identifying who those students are.
Is there a, I've heard you over the year and a half that I've known you, you've talked a lot about the sort of the advanced literacies and HRL framework.
Yeah.
Is there a similar framework that you've identified for math?
Yes.
What is it referred to?
So our team will be using a book called Principles in Action, which is published by the National Council of Teachers for Mathematics, or NCTM. And Principles in Action is the text that they'll use to ground in those mathematical practices. And the mathematical practices, correct me if I'm wrong, are listed out in the Next Generation Learning Standards Framework, which was previously Common Core. So those mathematical practices have, by and large, transferred over from Common Core. And what I can do is at the next meeting, I can prepare a listing of what those mathematical practices are and, give like a presentation on them. Yeah, for sure.
Those are my questions. On that, I'm good. I'm just complicated. It doesn't. Go ahead.
Just making a note. I was making a note for next meeting. Okay. So next is Regents data. So we've been speaking about accelerated programming offerings in the district, and one thing that came up was performance of students and number of students who have been offered to take the Regents in middle schools across District 20. So in District 20, almost all, if not all of our middle schools offer to some extent an opportunity for students to participate in the Regents. And in order to participate in the Regents, which is the high school level proficiency test in math, sciences, there are 2 science exams, and US history and government. There's also an English exam at the Regents level, but we don't offer it in middle school. In order for a middle schooler to be able to earn Regents credit by taking the test, they not only have to be able to sit for the test, but they also have to have a year's worth of instruction in a class that is Regents level. And so what I did was I have organized the numbers, the total number of students in the district who sat for a Regents class and sat for the Regents and compared 2019 to 2022. One thing that we did do in the district last year when we started the conversation around opportunities for acceleration for students in our middle schools was support principals in identifying additional ways to expand these opportunities for students. So we are able to see the impact of their efforts to expand those offerings. So typically the Algebra 1 Regents and the Living Environment Regents are the 2 most commonly offered Regents in middle school. And we had an increase of students from 1,165 to 1,000, so almost over 100 more students were able to take the Regents last year than in 2019. And similarly in Living Environment, we had, my math is not great right now. Thank you. 68 more students take the Living Environment Regents than in 2019. So we were happy to see that we were able to offer to more students. Earth Science is a Regents that is given very rarely in middle school. It's something that happens a little bit later in high school typically. And then the US History and Government Regents as well. However, there's no data from last year because it wasn't offered last year. And then I also prepared, just for context, the performance overall in the district for students on the Regents. So these are the overall percentages of how students performed. So in 2019, for the Algebra Regents, the district average was 86.9%, and last year was 83%. And similarly, so Living Environment, we had 85% average in 2019, 81% average in 2022. There was no average in US History and Government. And then Earth Science, we had a larger dip, but I just for context, the sample size of students in the Earth Science Regents was significantly smaller than the other 2. Far less schools offer Earth Science than Algebra 1 or the Living Environment. And I think that if you have any questions about Regents before I go to the next movement, this would be a good time.
Maya, can you hear me?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yes, Maya, hold on one second. I'm just going to put on the microphone. Okay, go ahead, Maya.
Hi, everyone. Hi, David. I think it's a great statistics that you put together. I just wonder, because what we actually came across is that, teachers and in at least in our school and principal are very cautious about offering region level classes to children, and they were trying to select kids who are not eligible to take regions. So are you encouraging, do you communicate with the principals in encouraging them to let kids to take region exams, or they are trying to? I just wanted to, are they punished for? Is anyone punished for allowing kids to take region exams and not doing well? What would you rather have, kids trying to take regions and doing, not doing really well, but trying, or just, banning kids who you think are not ready?
So thanks for the question. I got to be honest with you. I've never thought about it that way. No, definitely not. Do schools or principals get punished or in any way for this? This is a high number of students, sitting for and passing the regents, comparably across the city. Even for the number of students that we have in District 20, this is a pretty high number. So no, my approach is to, like I mentioned in previous meetings and with the work with middle school principals this year, was to look for the opportunities to expand this opportunity for children. Wherever possible, we want to offer the opportunity for children to be able to have access to this. The conversation around the impact of Regents credit on a student when they go into high school is another conversation. I think that those experiences are different, but from our perspective, we really encourage wherever possible for students who can sit for them to be able to sit for them. And the issue has never been, in my experience, around children who are capable. It's been around it's been around being able to program it and be able to have teachers who can teach it. Because the Regents are, when it comes down to it, Regents is high school level courses and have high school level requirements. So that typically ends up, and at middle school, we are required to ensure that students have grade level instruction and are meeting grade level standards. So the Regents is something in addition to it. So that's one thing that we definitely take into account and would account for the fact why more children don't. I think that something else to think about is that the Regents are offered in 8th grade only, and the middle school experience starts in the 6th grade. So I think that that's something else that is just a factor in determining what children end up taking it. But from a district,
Thank you. Thank you very
Superintendent,
much.
if I may, I think
And-
I've heard that concern before, that if a child takes a Regents in 8th grade and he gets or she gets a low score, quote unquote, how will that impact them on their high school transcript 5 years later? And so that's why I think some students, maybe principals, are reticent, or some parents are reticent of having their children take a Regents if they're not going to do well. But I don't think it matters, to be honest with you. I think an 85 in a Regents, I think that's a darn good grade for 8th grade.
It is the averages. The averages definitely reflect that the children who are taking and passing the Regents are passing them at levels that constitute at or near the full credit and experience, and kind of at a district level warrants it happening. But at the end of the day, it is a choice, right? So it is the choice of a parent to have their child participate or not participate in the Regents, and that's something that I would always leave and honor the decision of a parent.
Thank you. David, last question. I'm so sorry. It's just an interesting topic. For schools that do not offer, for example, if the child is ready and studying after school, whatever, tutor, whatever, on his own or her own, is ready to take a Regent, but school did not offer a course. For example, I know for a fact that some advanced schools are offering geometry Regent, but if the school does not provide it, is there any chance for a child to do that on his or her own?
No, in order to be able to earn Regents credit, the Regents is a structure set up by the New York State Board of Regents. So in order to earn a New York State Regents diploma, you have to earn a certain number of Regents credits, and in order to earn the credits, you have to sit for the course and pass the exam. So a child couldn't, on their own, to my knowledge, independently study for the Regents on their own and pass the Regents without being enrolled in the course and passing the Regents. And then, I want to say that the two most commonly administered Regents in 8th grade are Algebra 1 and Living Environment, because those are the two Regents that students in high school first take at the youngest years. the other regions, which include earth science, history and government, ELA, those are given in years past freshman year or sophomore year historically. So those are going to be the more advanced high school courses. So those aren't going to be the ones that we would typically offer to students, and we can only offer so many in 1 year. So I think that would kind of explain why certain regions are offered versus others.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
David, I'm not going to unmute, but just you mentioned it's offered at almost all middle schools. How many? What do we have?
I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure, I want to say that I'm pretty sure that every single one of our schools offers the regions. But I have to get back to you because I want to say that I think there's one that doesn't, but I want to double check and make sure before I speak on it publicly.
And again, the constraint would be, one thing I heard you say is you have to have teachers who can teach the region's coursework. Is there any other constraints on why a school couldn't offer it?
What do you mean by constraints?
Reasons that we couldn't offer it at every school.
I think could it also would have to be matched up with would it. It's also a choice that a school can make. They can also just choose not to offer the regions for programming reasons, for vision and philosophy reasons, that there's no demand for it, or the demand for it is small. There's a lot of reasons why they couldn't or wouldn't.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Oh, I was muted. Could you hear that? Okay, and then. So I'll move on. I just want to give a brief presentation about the listening tour. So I conducted a listening tour across the district. I held 3 in-person events in September and October. So we started at the PS 503-506 campus. We held a listening tour event at PSIS 180 and the final event at PS 204. And I want to thank my team for supporting and coordinating it. I want to thank all 3 principals and their parent coordinators and their entire staffs for welcoming me in. It was a great experience, and I definitely look forward to continuing to have similar events. I want to share some of the key findings. At all of the listening tour, I heard concerns. I kind of ranked these in the order of how often I was hearing them at the schools. So at every single tour event, I heard about safety concerns in the community. I did share how we, at the beginning of the year, met with every precinct commander from all of the precincts that serve District 20 to, open up the conversation and make sure that we had, communication and connection between the precinct officers and principals to make sure that, schools were a place that community members knew that in the absence or in need that their schools were connected to the NYPD in the case that they needed to make that outreach and connection, where 911 or 311 or outreach to a neighborhood community officer was challenging, that we had those connections. And we have been responsive so far in our work in the district, and will continue to be so, around concerns that are brought to my attention that are either need for a partnership with the NYPD or something that I need to bring in the borough safety director or my team to observe. So anything from dismissal and arrival patterns to the arise, there have been different communities that have cited some external factors that have raised concerns from the community. But overall, the safety concerns have been external, outside the schools, traveling to and from school, arrival and dismissal, and general external patterns in the community. So far, there have not been any safety concerns inside the schools. The second big one was access to after-school programs. Every single school community that we visited communicated concerns around increase and need for more after-school programs. So that's something that we've definitely continued to communicate to the Department of Youth and Community Development. I want to thank Donovan for coming to one of the listening tour events and, sharing his expertise and from the Borough President's office and that lens around how elected officials and capital funds and the like can support after school programs. But in general, that's been a big concern of the community that we'll continue to see how we can, communicate that up and make connections wherever possible. The third one was around the quality of instruction and the opportunities for accelerated instruction in the schools. So rigorous instruction, making sure that the teaching and learning in the classroom was aligned to standards, and that was going across English, math, science, social studies, all the content areas, and then access to accelerated programs. So, we shared the data around the regents as kind of like a starting point, but there's other opportunities to be able to highlight programs in the district that offer accelerated opportunities for students. So that's something that I will continue to bring to light and focus our attention and energies around honoring the chancellor's pillar around scaling and sustaining things at work, looking at accelerated programs that exist in the district and seeing where we can, expand those to other schools. Admissions policies, which I'm going to talk on today. Middle school and high school admissions has been a huge topic of conversation in the entire city and the nation. But I will definitely speak specifically about middle school admissions and how that's being addressed in District 20. And then finally, there was a concern around access to online learning applications. There have been some apps that were available during the pandemic that may have been supported either district-wide or citywide, as well as the way in which families can navigate to those apps. So that's something that I'm really thinking about with my team and the establishment of the District 20 website, which we're at the final stage before it goes live. We're just deciding on the URL title, so we're down to two, either CSD 20 Brooklyn or CSD20.com. But as soon as that's done, we're going to be launching that and making connections to all of our school-based websites and also providing guidance on topics that come up in general in the district, including like how to access the applications online that are available to all District 20 families, as well as those that are available specifically at schools. Next steps, one thing that I was grappling with was the format. So we held all of the listening tour events in person. So something I'm definitely interested in getting feedback on for future events, which I anticipate having another string of events in the wintertime around January, February. Whether to hold them virtual or in person is something, and definitely topics. So we're really looking into how the fall and the winter go for topics for discussion. But definitely these are ones that we want to monitor. And obviously with admissions policies, we're going to be potentially making some changes from the last 2 years. So that'll be something that we likely monitor. All right. And then finally, I want to speak specifically on the middle school. Oh, yeah.
Can I just, Jen, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to ask a question before David moves on?
Sorry, it was just a general question on the online applications. Can you hear me?
Let me just get you on the microphone and then we'll hear you even better. Go ahead, Jen.
Just have a question on the online learning applications. Do you already have an idea which applications parents want access to, and or which ones were that teachers found actually worked?
Hi, Jen. Hi, Jen. Thanks for the question. There wasn't enough feedback to get specific. It was more about general access, kind of where to go to get it and what my school has. That was the general takeaway. There wasn't any specific application or dig into ones that families felt like worked better than others. It was more a general like access and which ones were available.
Are there any plans to gather some of that data as to like which online learning applications would be good for our particular district for perhaps, remote learning applications or just supplemental, instruction? Because I think that would be really helpful in some cases, and it wouldn't be tied to like a person's location or school. They can just access a specific application and be able to do some kind of advanced work or get some more support for reading and math if they needed it. There's just so much potential if we can find applications that actually work.
So what I can definitely do for the next meeting is I can provide a report on all of the online applications that are available to all students district-wide via the DOE Teach Hub. And I can also say that one application that many of our schools utilize is the iReady application, because all of our schools administer the iReady diagnostic screener 3 times a year, and all have access to supplemental resources that are connected to iReady, whether or not that school has the additional online learning instructional component. Every school has access to resources that can support students based off, that's informed on the iReady results. So that's something that parents can, can ask their teachers about. Parents can ask their child's teacher about, as well as their child's parent coordinator or principal. And that's also some information that we will, continue to provide information. I'll definitely prepare more detailed for the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Students. Okay. We good? Okay, and then finally, I want to be able to, describe the process for, and the process and timeline for the decision around middle school screened admissions. So a couple of weeks ago now, not more than that, but a couple of weeks ago, Chancellor Banks and the DOE announced that with regard to the decision of whether a school will have a academically screened admissions process for the upcoming school year, that the district superintendent will, be making that decision. So the process that schools are going through, all schools, all middle schools in District 20 were to go through a process when considering whether to implement screened admissions at the middle school level for incoming 6th graders for next year. So the process included the need and the requirement for the principal to engage their entire school community, which included at minimum the SLT and the PTA. After initial consultation with CEC on this process, we also added the requirement for principals to reach out to and include elementary school families in those in that engagement. And I know that that has been happening. There was an engagement last night. There's an engagement going on, I think, today, and a few others in schools that are considering implementing an academically screened program for next year. I also required that this school community provide to me a description of the program that incoming students would be offered, and the description of this program would include an overall description of what students would experience starting in 6th grade and ending in 8th grade. I also asked for, within that description of the program, the rationale for screening admissions into that program. So long story short, that the program did not just include like an 8th grade component, that students who were experiencing this program, that the program would be initiated in 6th grade, and that program also was distinct, accelerated, more rigorous, and more challenging and specialized than the offerings for the non-screened admissions process. The screening tool, so citywide, the default is a composite of 4th grade core course outcomes, or their report card grades. And schools are considering in their proposals potentially adding in an additional screening tool that would be school-based. So if the program that they were proposing was highly specialized, so for example, I've been using the example of if this program that students would experience included like a computer software engineering component, that perhaps there would be some additional assessment that included computer programming expertise of the child. But any additional assessment would have to be administered by the school. So I haven't seen any of their proposals yet. So it's something that I definitely wanted to put out there for consideration. I wasn't going to shut off the possibility for that. And then principals and schools are proposing the plan to me. And then in conjunction with that, we're finalizing the District 20 grading policy for this process, as well as for informing the entry point for the third grade gifted and talented program. The third grade gifted and talented program that has been established at PS 127. The entry for that is based off of the top 10% of second grade grades of all students across District 20 schools. So because of the need for potential cohesion across the district for these variety of potential of screened admissions, the third grade gifted and talented program at 127, and then potential middle school sites, we're going to need to have our grading policy finalized prior to first quarter, first semester, first marking period report card. So we've been consulting with district leadership team and CEC, and I'll be consulting and finalizing with all principals, elementary and middle school principals, for to be finalized by October 18th. And then in conjunction with the final DOE admissions announcement, which will be October 26th. So the decision around what schools, if any, will have a screened admissions program for next year will be announced October 26th, and obviously at our next meeting.
Can you quickly share, I've been obviously in the DLT meetings, so I know it, but can you quickly share the grading policy changes that you're thinking about?
Sure. So the grading policy changes that we're looking at, previously the grading policy had the grading policy did two things. One, it provided alignment for elementary schools primarily, who historically would provide a grade of 1, 2, 3, or 4 for how children would perform, and would create a numerical alignment so that a more specific grade could be given to elementary school students, just kind of like a middle school student would get a 92% in a course instead of getting a level 4. We would the elementary schools were also offer a similar type of numerical score, so you could get more specific about how children were performing in the class. So that was one component of the grading policy, which we will maintain, a numerical component. The other component was the course weights, so the percentage of assignments, tests, homework, and how much those things were weighted in the grade in the grade. So previously there were 45% of a child's grade in a class was constituted of like the exams, the tests, the quizzes that a child would, assessments that children would have. That was 45%. Then 30% went to a category called class participation. That was 30%. And then there was 25% that was assigned to projects and homework. So on the district leadership team, we've had discussions around specifically around the impact of the weighting on homework and the weighting on the category of class participation, which was very general. And what I proposed, and I was really concerned with and proposed to the DLT around the percentage that was applied to homework potentially. And we had a discussion around how the percentage of homework was compared against the time that children were spending in school, and trying to really factor in how factors beyond children's control frequently impacts their ability to complete homework or complete it at a high level. And we wanted to think about how that level of control that children have on life outside of school could be potentially factored into like how they were performing in their grade in school. We wanted to make sure that we were providing the highest lever for a child's grade based on the time that they were spending in school, where they weren't concerned about life factors that were beyond their control. So I was really seeking, and the district leadership team was in agreement around seeking to reduce that percentage of impact of homework, as well as be very clear about what we meant by classroom participation. There was an example in the previous policy around how children volunteering to participate in class equaled a child getting rewarded with a higher grade. And I had some concerns around that. A big focus on our work this year and last year, and a fundamental component of the hallmarks of advanced literacies, is intentionally designing experiences for students so that all children are meant to engage in the task. And it went that concept and approach of ensuring that, of strategically and intentionally designing tasks so that all children participate and learn, went counter to the policy where there was an assumption that not all children were intended to participate. So we wanted to kind of move away from that, but still really honor the component in the grading policy that the spirit and intention was around, which was around the assignments that children are given in class. So the work that's assigned in class is carrying a significant weight, as well as projects. I think there was a lot of assumption around how projects are assigned, how projects are completed, and where projects are completed. And there was a discussion around how frequently projects are assigned to children. So a project is like just basically an assignment that's completed over more than one day. And I think that there was the assumption that frequently projects were taken home and were kind of completed as part of homework. And that was, again, something that I was really concerned with. There was this assumption that, resources or access or frankly, time, space carved out for children was going to be dedicated equally across all households and homes, so that this significant weight was going to either work or not work for a student in terms of their grade. So we've proposed category weights that are maintain the 45% for the exams, quizzes, assessments. That will remain unchanged. We're proposing a 25% weight for classroom assignments, a 25% weight for projects, that's classroom assignments that occur over more than one day, and then a 5% weight for homework.
At the DLT meeting, you said you were going to increase the weight for assessments. What changed since then?
Well, we were looking at that category around projects, and frequently projects or these multi-day assessments are things that are not assigned all the time. So for example, an essay that a child would complete over several days, a process-oriented piece where they have to write a draft and get it revised and do the final piece. If they're going to engage in a group project that it goes over several days, that could be something that would still carry the same heavy weight, but just wouldn't incorporate or enable a child to be negatively impacted because maybe it wasn't designed in a way that all children were ensured to participate, but also give teachers, frankly, the leeway and the discretion to assign, because the teacher at the end of the day is going to know best where that task, that assessment, that project is going to lie. So the teacher is going to ultimately make the decision along with the principal and the school-based structures for assigning tasks to particular category weights. They, at the end of the day, there's a project that could be considered an assessment, and a teacher could put it in the 45% category, or there's a project that they could assign on its own that could fall in the 25% category. Either one is possible.
Yeah, especially looking at class assignments and projects.
Class assignments I would typically organize as an assignment that's being given that period, that day, that's being given in class and is being turned in that day.
And projects could be multi-day, would tend to be overnight, multi-day.
That's right, and also could potentially incorporate other partners. So working alongside your peers, whereas class assignments, kind of in general, class assignments are going to be those that are completed by an individual student.
Superintendent, may I just jump in and ask a quick question? I don't see any other hands. Well, I have concerns with, great, I think you want to try to level the playing field. And I have similar concerns about group projects specifically, because I think that with group projects, everyone gets the same, in my experience, the kids in the group will get the same grade. And I think we need to maybe explore ways for teachers can really drill down a little deeper and see how each kid participated in that group and what they brought to the project, and maybe even consider grading each kid individually within that group project.
Part of exactly what you're describing is kind of fundamental to our approach this year around the intentional structuring and the use of protocols to ensure that there is a specific and intentional thing for every single child to be doing in every single learning task. And it's always, and in group projects, it's always the most challenging. So we're really doing a lot of work, and this is something that I observed in schools, multiple schools across the district in my visits last year, and really informed the need to focus on this at the district level. So absolutely.
Thank you, Superintendent. That's really great, to be honest. Thank you.
So this is the.
David, one quick side.
No, no problem.
There's one request from the chat. Can you just?
Yeah.
Let me unmute.
I'm gonna stop. This is my last slide, so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen if that's okay.
There's just one from the chat. Can you just repeat the breakdown? The weighting. So the proposed, the current, and then the proposed.
Sure. So the previous grading policy, 45% for tests, quizzes, assessments, 30% for class participation, 25% for projects/homework. That was the previous grading policy. The proposed policy will be 45% for exams, quizzes, assessments, 25% for classroom assignments, 25% for projects, 5% for homework.
And that's your last slide?
That's my last slide. That concludes my report.
Council members, are there any questions for Superintendent Preto? Just looking through the hands.
I don't know how to raise a hand.
Okay, go ahead, Maya.
Oh, I see my name behind you. It's really impressive presentation. Thank you so much, David. I just wanted to raise one more thing. I did not see the reflection of it in the presentation, but it's definitely something that many parents would, I don't know what the word, confirm that kids stopped reading. And I have two children. One child was a reader and is a reader, and she's in college by now. And another child, same family, same values, not reading, only if assigned. And I do not see schools emphasizing they need to read, even though they say you have to read 30 minutes a day. Yes, right. Nobody reads. And we used to have, like with my older one, we had reading logs, and teachers were very focused on parents populating reading logs, and kids had to write book reports. And I remember, it was painful, but it was encouragement. Sometimes it was hard, sometimes it was easier, but kids were told that they need to read, and teachers are, on their case. Right now, it's very loosey-goosey, as we say, and I don't see schools kind of pushing it because they think, we should not push because kids will hate it. But as a result, I feel like the last crumbs of the control of school are gone. And as a parent, I'm very concerned. And as I said, I have two children. One is a reader, one not. and one was reading by herself. This one needs encouragement and control. And I was looking for school to help, and I do not see that kind of support I'm looking for.
So Maya, I just want to make sure that I'm hearing you correctly. You're saying that you're not seeing support and an emphasis on reading in schools right now?
That's correct. So the soft kind of approach, the soft touch of, you need to read 30 minutes, you need to read 40 minutes a day. It's not checked, and it's just told, children are told they need to read, and I'm talking about middle schooler here. Kids are told to read, and they know they should read. They do not read like book a month, or they read for the literacy, for the ELA, but they read very particular things, like they read Romeo and Juliet for 3 months, and it's okay, they do closed reading in the class, but I do not see that schools are pushing the independent reading as assignments. And I feel like if we return this in some form, it would help parents. And I'm talking about fairly advanced middle schooler. So it's I don't know what other parents think about it, but something I wanted to bring up.
So you're looking for like success here would be more assigning of independent reading as homework.
And checking it, and some form of a responsibility. So kids are kids, some love reading, some do not, and they need some little push here and there. So it could be part of the grade, it could be some sort of report they need to write, or some sort of a maybe book club, or not a book club, but book club form of discussion, when teacher can see who was reading it and who was not. So something that will show the child, child would know that if he or she is cheating and not reading, they will be, I don't want to say punished, but yes, they're going to be a price to pay in terms of the grades for not reading. Something that will, I'm sure there are lots of fancy and more, graceful strategies, but I just feel like, if you could put it back somewhere in your presentation and start maybe brainstorming. I hear a lot of parents, complaining about lack of reading, and school being very soft on pushing children to read, at least, and those parents I spoke to.
Thanks. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, so I think that, so no more questions from council members for Superintendent Preto.
Comment for superintendent, sorry.
I'm making an observation. From looking at the data that you shared about the state test scores, I kind of tried to calculate in my head, but about 33 to 39% of all of the kids in our district scored 4 or more on those state exams. Is that an accurate representation?
Oh, for the level 4s?
Yes. I mean, we just round numbers. Is fine.
Yeah, sure.
Is it about that?
It is that. Okay. For level 4s, in ELA, it was anywhere from the teens to 40%, and then that's across grades 3 to 8, and then in math, it was in level 4s was in the 30s across the board.
So when you talk about a differentiated program, I love it. Is it possible to look at these 35% of the population as a group of kids who, parents and families, who would want a specific differentiated program that is substantially different from the, I know they don't call it Mosaic anymore, right? They made it, I don't know, does it have any other name? Or do we have a standardized curriculum?
That's apples to oranges.
I mean, no. A special program aside from a community-based program. I'm thinking of an international baccalaureate program type program. And we have maybe 30,000 kids in this district who scored 4 or better, who might, when we're talking about a different program for your gifted, not your screen programs, something that would be specific. And what would that look like to you? I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the IB program that's not regions-based, but is broader and deeper than the regular curriculum. And is that something that you as a superintendent can standardize across the district? And what would that look like to you in light of the fact we may have 33,000, we may have 10,000 kids who might want or appreciate a program like that?
So kind of what you're describing is exactly what I've tasked schools and principals to do. I think what is, none of our schools currently offer international baccalaureate.
A program kind of similar but doesn't have a label on it.
What a lot of the schools have done, including 187, is what they have done is they've established and created and nurtured programs that they've gotten really good at implementing, and in some cases are really highly specialized, unique, different, and incredibly rigorous. And this discussion around screened admissions and using academics to screen children into is an opportunity for schools to really explore the school community's feelings, desires around what they're offering and what the experience has been in the school, but also like what are the programs that they offer. And one thing that's really amazing about District 20 is that they are different schools who do different things really, really, really well. And we're really looking for this to be a way to highlight those things and expand them wherever possible and do a better job of kind of linking those programs to kids in demand. And so I guess IB could be thought of as a similar type of approach. It's just IB is a very specific structured approach that is, because it's one that would be very new. I haven't seen any schools so far talk about incorporating it. I haven't gotten any final proposals, so I haven't seen any. So I'm not saying that it's impossible, but
I guess what I'm saying, sir, is it something that would be your purview, or something that you have a desire you think would be productive to kind of like take all of these proposals are coming in and create a standardized District 20 proposal based on all of the different feedback? Because my feeling is that if one school has one program, one school has another program, you still have kids fighting over, well, I didn't get in this program and this was my second choice. I got into this program, which is okay, but I really wanted that program in this school. And if you as a superintendent could guide the principals or the school, I mean, to recreate whatever you decide at that certain level and make it standardized to support all of the kids, all of the possible 10,000 kids who are getting forced.
It's a good question. I'll be honest with you, I haven't really thought about a standardized district program to kind of meet this this demand you speak of. I haven't really seen the demand for a district-wide program, kind of what you're describing. And what I'm really looking to do is to support schools in providing and expanding what they're already like really good at. The performance of students in the district is reflective of a few things, but one of the things that's reflective of is like the high quality of programs that are being offered across all of our schools. So, I would like, again, with the chancellor's idea of like scaling and sustaining what works, we have schools that offer like really truly amazing curricular programs and experiences for kids in schools that are aligned to content areas and that are, more experiential and could almost be considered like career oriented. So I imagine this conversation to continue going on. Like, I imagine that this conversation will be something that after decisions are made around this cycle, we'll revisit it, probably in the spring to continue discussing. I'm happy to do so. I
think one way to to figure out what the demand is by seeing how many kids apply to the schools that we already have. I know we have way more people, more kids apply to schools like Diker and McKinley and 187 than we have, capacity for. And I think that's one way to see what our demand is for these types of programs. Yeah, I
hear you. I feel like I've been hearing the concept of demand across a lot of the conversations that are tied to accelerated programs, gifted and talented, the screened admissions. And so one reason why I really wanted to make sure that families and communities were engaged in this process of deciding was to, kind of support the school leaders in being able to ascertain demand, considering the framework and timeline that we were provided. That's something that's kind of like not in our control. But we could definitely to be continued around the discussion around demand for sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
David, as you just said, the conversation could go on, and I don't want to go on. It's almost closing on at 9 o'clock. We got to get to public speaking, but I sort of echo some of Vito's thoughts. You'll hear it more in the resolution we have. And if you're not considering, I'm curious what you said about the elementary school engagements going. Is there any update on those specifically, elementary school parents and what they're saying they want? Because I've heard from many that would indicate a very strong demand for. I'm just going to use the term, but for simplicity's sake, so we know what we're talking about, but to go back to the old superintendent program, which was a district-wide, fairly, I don't want to say it was standardized. I know it varied a lot and it was a little bit opaque, but it was a district-wide understanding that you could go across the district and you look at these schools and apply to them. Again, I guess I just want you to sort of, share your thoughts on whether that does indicate demand and sort of your thoughts on that as a model to return to. In addition to all the other programs you've mentioned, which I think are great. I think the IIM program at McKinley is great. I think the academy tracks that are certain schools are proposing are great, but also adding in that option.
So to the point around what elementary school families are doing, are saying, I'm not sure yet. Like what I did task all the principals who are at schools who are considering establishing a screen program at their school was to outreach to all elementary school families. So we did that by having all middle school principals who are considering programs, and part of that was they had to hold community engagements, was to provide the information for when those are happening, so that all of our elementary school principals and parent coordinators could blast that out to families. So that's how that was kind of our approach to make sure that everyone heard about it as quickly as possible. And we'll hear what is happening. It's a short timeline, so I'm going to probably hear by Friday and over the weekend. Definitely by the next meeting, I'll be able to provide a report and we'll have decisions. As far as I don't see, and this is, I think conceptually, the idea of the screened program and the kind of what you're calling like the old kind of quote unquote superintendent gifted program, I'm not, I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing a huge difference at all between like the establishment of these screened programs now and what the superintendent gifted program was in the past, with the exception that I'm requiring schools that are establishing one of these programs to clearly articulate what the program actually is. Whereas in the past, that was not clearly articulated. A superintendent's gifted program, what children experienced in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade was not clarified or defined. And in my experience in that superintendent gifted program, there was very little distinction or clarity between what the experience that the superintendent's class had and the zoned class or not superintendent's program class was next door. And because of that, I was highly concerned around the rationale for screening in the first place. So the primary reason for my requirement for schools to describe the program was to like kind of provide some clarity to families around what their children were being offered and what they were going to experience, and provide a rationale for screening them in the first place. That's really at the core of it, the reason for any of this process.
Couldn't the rationale be ascertaining a child's learning level? And if their learning level is higher than their current grade, you place them into a screened program, a core screened program with other students at a similar learning level. Isn't that the reason for a screening process?
Sorry. I mean, we could definitely get into a longer conversation about it, but the short answer is that children have different. I mean, I don't like using the term levels when we're talking about a student, but like the short answer is one student doesn't constitute one level. Children are really good at certain things and they're challenged in other things, and because of that, you know, we really want to see how we can use resources that do exist to take an approach that enables children to really have the opportunity to not just receive an accelerated rigorous experience, but something that's really kind of tapping into also what they're, you know, really good at and what they're really interested in. So and I think that children deserve it, and I think that families deserve it. I think they deserve to kind of know what it is that their child is getting beyond just the idea that it's kind of a level above or below. Because one, I don't think that describing it in those terms accurately represents what the child is receiving, and I don't think that it gives credence or clarity to the specialized and amazing things that the kids are experiencing in the school. So at the end of the day, I really see this as an opportunity for some of our schools to really highlight and expand on those on some of those really amazing experiences. And I want to add the caveat that it's going to be clear what's going to support that child from 6th to 8th grade. It's not just going to be a program that is designed to forecast who's going to take the Regents in 8th grade, which has historically been kind of a quote-unquote default approach to this. And I don't think that a child's grades in 4th grade is an accurate predictor of whether or not they're going to take the Regents in 8th grade. A lot of time passes between their 5th grade grades and the 8th grade. So I think that students, families deserve a clarity around the experience that starts in 8th grade, starts in 6th grade and ends in 8th grade. And I think that our schools, that are considering the, instituting programs are up to the task in defining what that is.
Okay. Thanks, Superintendent, for a great report. And I'm now going to go directly to, I don't have any comments I would like to make. I think it's more important that we move to the public speaking portion of our meeting. For anyone who joined late, we have, I will make one comment. For anyone who joined late, we opted to remove a bylaw amendment from the agenda. We did this after a 30-day feedback period from the community, from various members of the, frankly, in this case, from the disability community. And so we've removed that from the agenda. So you might have seen that on the agenda. You might be here because of that, but we're not gonna, that amendment is essentially dead. I am now going to, let's get the public comment session lined up. Is that the sheet, Sylvia? Oh, but that's just, there's no one here. And I will put the, yes, Sylvia. I can't, what's that? Oh, okay. I'm going to drop the, one more time, I'm going to drop the link in the chat. That's the, I just put the link to the public speaking sign up sheet in the chat again.
It's also on the website. And I see that we have 13 people signed up. Can I just... This is, okay. Is Eileen Chen still on? Eileen? Chen, C-H-E-N. Eileen, if you can hear me, can you please unmute yourself? And while we wait, I'll just remind people we have 3 minutes for public speaking. As always, standard rules of open meetings apply. Address ideas, not individuals. I am going to move on now. Eileen Chen is not here. I see a name in here, Fatih El, F-A-T-I-E-L. If you can hear me and you're still on. Yep. Oh, I see you're still on there. I'll ask what you unmute. Fatih El. Can you hear me? If you would like to speak, you can. Guess not. Okay. We will move on in that case. Michelle Magnus. Michelle, can you hear me and are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay. Hello?
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Michelle. Okay. Sorry, I stayed home today. Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So first, I just want to, in regards to the state scores, they give us an idea of the children's understanding of these subjects. Then why are the solutions focused on support of the teachers and administration and not of the students? We have at least 30 to 40% students who aren't proficient. This is a huge number of students on a bigger scale. Why are the solutions not including support like tutoring for these students? And I don't mean virtual support like iReady, I mean like actual people. In regards to the universal curriculum that was just discussed on a district level, I feel like it serves a little, our district serves a little above a half of accelerated learners, and then almost the other half are struggling learners. To implement a universal accelerated program isn't addressing the needs of all. That being said, I still believe we should provide rigor, but also provide support for struggling learners, like tutors. Let me see. In regards to enrollment projections that was discussed earlier, how are they planning for smaller class sizes? I think some of this might have been discussed, but these were my notes. Either way, most of schools are either at capacity or crowded, so the projection is irrelevant in regards to enrollment projections. There's a need for more schools in our district, so what are they going to do for it now instead of waiting for laws to possibly be put into effect? How do we have the funds? Do we have them? I feel like these honest answers would be great. And then I always hear District 75 needing more. You know, our district is highly sought out and there is a lot of need of D75. So I'd like to see more of that done for them. Still, what's going on with dyslexia, but from the chancellor and the DOE level, how are schools being getting any kind of curriculum to address kids with dyslexia and screen for it? I think I wrote how are we as a district helping struggling learners, those 30% who 30 to 40% who aren't hitting the proficiency? What support does the district are looking to provide, or do they provide? Like maybe after school tutoring programs. I know Superintendent Preto mentioned about instructional support at a district level when schools, how is that being done when schools have different curriculums based on their population needs? How does that look like for this, like the math support for our schools? I'm just curious on that level.
It's 3 minutes.
Another,
so sorry,
oh,
that's
all
3
right,
minutes.
that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'll get to it. Yeah, we'll get to it. I'm going to go through the Google form right now. Thanks, Sylvia. Is there Mu Ying Zhang on the line? MU? Last name Zhang? Don't see her. Next up is Paulette Healy. Paulette?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to utilize this space not to talk about screens at all, but to talk about how come the next term on the CEC, there will be a mandatory D75 member. So we can finally uplift the voices of our children who have been bussed out of this district for over 30 years and prioritize maybe, expanding the equity within our D75 inclusion programs, because in the 30 years this program has been implemented, out of 24,000 D75 students, only 1,500 are enrolled in inclusion programs. I want to use this space to elevate talks about how our children are still waiting for ICT teachers and speech therapists and OTs within our district, because our schools just don't have the funding to get the staff in for the students that they need to serve. And our children, every day that they lose their services, that is another day that they are falling behind. Let's talk about that, because I've spent 3 hours on this meeting, and other than the district planning meeting and the reports from Superintendent Prado, I have not heard a single parent member talk about how we're going to service those children who are still our children, who live in our backyard, who live in the houses that line the streets of our district from Kensington all the way down to Sunset Park, and let's prioritize them. Because as my colleague Ellen McHugh has already said, we've seen our specialized program disappear every day without even an acknowledgement to the parents who have the children going to them. So why don't we take this opportunity and pivot where the attention needs to go, which is our most marginalized students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ching Lin. Last name is Lin. Ching Lin, are you there? Okay. Next speaker is Susan. Susan, are you still on? Yeah. 9 o'clock isn't that late, is it? Next speaker, Tam, T-A-M. Tam?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm outside, so it might get a little bit noisy. I just want to say thank you for having this meeting. I'm actually part of District 2. My son goes to school there and just went through the middle school process. And I have a deep interest in D20. I know a lot of people who have done some really great work with students with disabilities, with inclusion. And I know that you're behind us, behind District 2 in the middle school, I guess, screening debate versus the lottery. We've had these discussions and we're wrapping up, I believe, on the 19th of this month with a decision or a recommendation from Superintendent Kelly McGuire. I just want to say that please include all voices. I love the students in District 20. I work with a lot of students in District 20. I'm working with a family right now who is Spanish speaking only, has not had their turning 5 yet, and their student is now placed in a general ed program and has very high needs and had a para and a 12-1 before. and they don't understand why this is happening. So I just want to echo what Paulette said. She is fierce in her love of all children, and I hope that your district can be equally as fierce in advocating for all students and try to consider using advanced courses and innovative curriculum in schools that support and elevate all students and are rigorous for all students, because that is a thing that I hear a lot at all of these meetings across the district that I'm trying to go to, just to be more informed and helpful, is that lottery places a student into a school and they drown because they shouldn't be there, because they're not good enough, they're not high achieving enough, based on a really outdated metric, standardized testing. And I can just say, and then I'll close, that my son was one of those students. He's had a heavy IEP since he was 3 years old. He's worked his butt off. Hard work doesn't always show up in test scores. And he is at Clinton now, which is an IB program. I was told to my face that he didn't deserve to be there, that if there wasn't a lottery, he wouldn't have been there, and that he was taking a seat away from a more deserving student. He is flourishing, he is thriving, he is so excited, he has so much intellectual curiosity, and the potential is like out of the world. So don't underestimate putting a child in a really challenging program that really piques their interest. There's a lot to be said for that versus segregating kids into different schools. So I just wanted to make that pitch. Thank you for having me and letting me speak tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, is there another parent? Here with just Tam? So we just heard Tamura read, and then there's another parent here that signed up to speak that is just Tam, T-A-M, and it's your time if you would like to speak. Okay, we'll move along. Tamara Stern, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, I'm gonna have to agree with the previous speakers because like I've really sat here from the beginning of when this meeting started. And besides the presentation from the Jamie and Perry and the superintendent, they were the only ones that mentioned anything really that had to do with special education and early Ls, English language learners. And I do know it basically states in your bylaws and everything like that that you have members specifically that's supposed to target special education and L. And the fact that there's been no information shared at this meeting about special education, what's happening with that? What are the concerns from the parents and the staff? From our L families as well, besides the ones that were mentioned, you're leaving us out of the conversation. And this has been a constant struggle every year to continue to voice our concerns, and we get pushed aside because everybody's concerned with G&T. They are not the only students and the only families that have concerns in any district, including this one. And unfortunately, we are the ones that are not getting the services that we need. And our kids need to be able to be functioning human adults, okay? And if they cannot read, and if they cannot write, and if they cannot do math at where they need to be in order to get to the places that they need to be, they won't be functioning members of the society, okay? And these same individuals they need to be able to take care of their families. They need to be able to have families. And they're going to be people that are going to be voting and possibly running for political offices as well. So we need to give them a voice, okay? And I'm really getting sick and tired of having this discussion at almost every meeting, okay? Because we fight just as hard as everybody else to get the services that are mandated for our children, okay? And the fact that we have to do it year in and year out over and over again is really ridiculous. and it needs to stop. And we need to have a voice here, and we're supposed to have a voice here. And this is ridiculous, you guys. Okay, we are a community based on diverse needs, and it needs to be represented here and in every space available where parents are. And this is not being done here.
Thank you. Next speaker, Warren. Are you still on? Warren? Next speaker is Wei Hui. I hope I said that right. Weihui. Not on. Next speaker is Yifang Chen. Yifang.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I am pretty offended by the comments from the previous parent. I mean, take for example, like PS102 used to have two advanced placement classes that, you know, parents they are on waiting list for, and they're in such a demand. Like I understand there's need for special ed and D75. Well, I'm in full support of that, but you give the parents the right to choose, right? You have the remember GNT is also a special form of special education requirement. Why do you think like some form of special education is like have priority over another form? I'm like signing here today. I want the main purpose is that I want the D20 to bring back the admissions for the middle school. As a parent of D20, we want meritocracy. Those students who work hard academically and made it to the top of their class should be rewarded. I say end the lottery right now and bring back screened admissions and bring back GNT classes. However you don't like it. I don't have a problem with special ed. I don't have a problem with D75. They are not in conflict of each other. Like, why is it over, like always fighting one over the other? Like GNT parents, we never attack like special needs. We're all for it. Remember, GNT is a special form of special need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Yunqing He. Yunqinghe. Sorry. And then final speaker, if Maggie Su is still on, last name spelled XU. Maggie. And then Maggie's not there, and then Sylvia is, you were saying that yeah, American Debate League, are you on?
Yeah.
It's written.
I see it.
Yeah. I don't see it. If someone can see American Debate League.
Yes, I'm on. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Good. Can
Hard to
I
see
can I suggest one thing? Superintendent just left to take a quick restroom break, and I know you wanted to speak specifically to him, right?
So I'll wait. Okay, not a problem. Thank you.
Let's just take a minute. I just wanted to let you know that. Are there any other? Let's do a quick check-in with the interpreters. Are there anyone on the language lines who would like to speak? Interpreters.
It seems we have no comments on the Spanish line.
Nobody so far in the Arabic line.
Okay. Mandarin?
There is no comments or questions from Mandarin line.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess what I'll propose, I know it's important for the American Debate League speaker to come back and to speak directly to superintendent. And I would also like superintendent to be here, obviously, for our resolution. Let me just, let's proceed. I won't keep the meeting, hold up the meeting. We'll come back to American Debate League. I want him to be able to speak directly to David when David's back. And David knows some of our presentation, some of our resolution, the contents. So is there anyone who can share the resolution right now? Is anyone in a position to do that? Go to the website or something, or should I do that? I can do that, yep. Yeah. So here's the amended resolution as it was amended and submitted earlier today for approval. Oh yeah, help if I shared my screen. So this is the resolution that we're putting out there. And this resolution is to formally put in place our ask for Superintendent Preda. It starts with the premise that there was a significant mandate in the 2021 CEC election. A good number of us are on this council because there were so many voices in the district that were not happy with the previous mayor's changes to the middle school admissions process. I strongly feel we have an obligation to seek to restore the programs that made District 20 such a popular district for so many years. It's worth restating, as we do in this resolution, that our district had the second highest number of votes cast in the entire city of any district. And again, getting back to this idea of ascertaining parent demand and sort of parent sentiment. The ask is to expand the number of screen middle school seats. It sounds like we're on track for that. Obviously, everything is kind of in flux here. And so partly we just wanted to write this resolution, recognizing that things are still evolving, but we felt it was very important to put it down on paper. And obviously the meeting is tonight. A second part of the ask, however, is that there is some of these seats, at least half, are what we're calling an accelerated learning track. Focusing on providing education in all core subject areas for any students who have demonstrated high proficiency in their current grade level. And we can, superintendent, and we were having a conversation before, but I just want to come back to this idea that it's about ascertaining where a student is, and if the student requires a higher level of learning, some kind of grade above, then we think that type of offering should be made in a district where, as Vito said, we have 35% of our students with 4s on state tests. This resolution goes on and it describes, it touches a little bit on the process. We did have some concerns with the process early on. Superintendents, as according to the DOE regulations, shall partner with school communities, leadership, staff, and parents, the emphasis being parents there. We really felt it was important to not just focus on the middle schools, because the elementary school parents are the ones who will be entering the system in 1 to 2 years. And we really wanted to make sure their voices were heard, which we were concerned that they wouldn't be if it was just limited to asking the middle school principals. Superintendent was agreeable to that, although we worry that with time, that the whole process is very time constrained. So we're trying to do the best, recommend the best option we can to get elementary school parents' voices heard on this topic. And then finally, there's the content of the programs. We have we've talked to a number of schools already about the programs they're proposing. A lot of them are very good programs. We're strongly in support of offering a variety of programs in a district as large as District 20. There's the explicit type of program that we're trying to we're trying to really recommend, and we've talked about it a little bit tonight, which is, I'll just call it the traditional accelerated academic curriculum, as I just mentioned. To put it simply, if a 6th grade student is learning at a 7th grade level, there's a program that allows these children to receive appropriate academic instruction. Superintendent's program, we've already mentioned it. It previously existed. There are many parents who would like an improved version. I agree with Superintendent Preda. We should improve this. I'm fully in support of making schools accountable and having them justify programs. And then finally, you know, it is a short time frame. We understand that. We go through here in this resolution just to show that we're contributing to sort of the idea generation process. We know we're not as close to the data as the district, as the DOE is. We had a chat earlier tonight with Office of District Planning. They have more up-to-date enrollment numbers. But what we did was we went through and we said, okay, if the district has a certain number of students and we have a certain number of schools, and we took a look at the capacity at some of these schools, and we tried to come up with an estimate for what would be a reasonable number of seats. And that's attached as an appendix to this resolution. It is the work of volunteer parents. It is not the work of DOE professionals who are closer to the data, but it's a framework for thinking about this. And we're really asking Superintendent, you to strongly consider this type of framework, which is looking at all of our schools, and we've got a lot of middle schools that are under capacity, despite all this talk all the time about District 20 being overcrowded. There's a lot of our middle schools that are under capacity. And there's a lot of schools, middle schools that, again, it's constantly where it's this issue of where there's a will, there's a way. And if we want to program these schools in a certain way, I believe we can, but the willingness has to be there. And that's what we're really trying to ask Dr. Preto tonight, is if the willingness is there, we'd like to recommend certain targets for academically screened schools. Again, appealing to district-wide, appealing to students who have, who this type of learning is right for them. That's what we're trying to do. And I'll just say, I think I'll leave it at that. I think I've said enough. And the asks at the end of this are just, again, like we said before, center the voices of elementary school parents. CEC members have been included to some extent, but we want that to continue and maybe even increase. Establish a target for the fall of 2025 of between 600 and 1,200 academically screened seats. Ensure that at least half the screened seats next year highlight this accelerated learning in core academic areas, math, science, ELA, and social studies. And then make the standards transparent, publish transparent standards for admission to each program. I think superintendent would agree on this one, including the number of seats, applicants. You know, give parents an idea of their likelihood of getting accepted to one of these programs. So that's the resolution. I will now stop sharing my screen, and I will go to any CEC members want to comment on this resolution.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to say something.
Of course, Jen.
Thank you. So this is yet another middle school resolution put out by the CEC. I'm a little disturbed because I just don't think this CEC is presenting a balanced representation of this district's many interests and issues. So I actually in support of expanding the screen programs in our district, but I would generally not try to force a program onto a school community that doesn't want it. I would try more like asking what the needs are in their district and trying to meet those needs. I have seen lots of invitations to engagement sessions, specifically extended to elementary school families. So I do feel like some of these asks are already being done. And if the CEC, as the CEC, do not feel that they are being consistently included, I really think we should be asking why schools might either be forgetting to include us or are actively avoiding our involvement. I think we should not be pushing our presence without first asking what the barriers are. And I personally think we would perhaps be more welcomed in more schools if we promised only to observe and not to try to influence any outcomes. I just want to say, to be clear, I am personally in favor of accelerated classes at schools. I know what it's like not to feel academically challenged for several hours a day, and I myself have personally benefited from these programs in schools. And I believe everyone's children deserve a chance to be fully developed in all of their gifts. And I do not deny the existence of intrinsic talents. The uncomfortable truth is some people are just better at math or reading or art or music. But raw intrinsic talent isn't fully useful if it isn't honed with learned skills and knowledge. And that is where education can really push a child into new heights. And that's why I feel that SCREAM programs have value and should be expanded. However, I can't ignore the fact that Black and Brown communities, ELL and IEP students are vastly underrepresented in these programs. None of our resolutions about screens pay any attention to that fact, which has been a huge point of contention when parents have showed up expressing opposition. And ignoring this sore spot increases divisions within our community. And I am saddened to see that there is nothing in this resolution that will expand these programs into these specific communities who are often subject to social and environmental pressures that other communities are not. I object to the idea that the 2021 CEC elections were a mandate specifically on screened programs. I think of the 10,000 votes cast, our council members altogether make up less than half that number. Those voters were not asked specifically what issues they voted on, not all of them. Maybe we know some of them, but we can't know all 10,000 of them. 10,000 of them, or even the 4,000 plus that voted for us, wanted specific issues voted on. We don't know that unless we've polled all of them, which we have not. So therefore, we don't have an overwhelming mandate, I don't believe, in our district to specifically advocate for specific items and not for others. So I do feel that it was a critique of the de Blasio administration. However, the dissatisfaction with his administration was more than just his handling of screened programs. It included his handling of the pandemic, schools in general, how he treated parents, how he managed the chancellor and so forth. So there were a lot of things to be complaining about, not just the screen stuff, which certainly is one of them, but not the only one. And if we are to talk about the importance of parents being heard, I think we should, as the CEC, make sure that all parent voices are being heard and represented here, not just the ones that further a very specific agenda. I think if we really want to improve all our schools, we shouldn't speak only of screened programs, but also on other issues such as summarizing, ELL programs, IEP compliance, which has been a very traditionally, difficult issue. Needs of low-income families, pre-K after-school programming, our kids feeling safe after all of these assurances that, things are being done, our parents really feeling heard here. Specific to this resolution, though, I would like to see ideas on expanding the program to reach underserved communities. I think the opposition we are seeing to the screen programs is there because there's a need in those communities that are not being met. And if we work towards meeting those needs without sacrificing the needs of another group, maybe some of this opposition would disappear, or at the very least, we can start this conversation on how to heal rather than be more divisive. Anyways, that is all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jen. Any other council members want to speak? I don't see any other hands raised.
Thank you, everybody. It's been a long night. I want to thank everybody for hanging in there. I want to give a shout out to 187. Their ACES program, I know for a fact, I've spoken about their program for years and years and years. I've advocated for that program. I've tried to make sure that program was both fully funded from as a PTO president. The kids in there were fully supported by me. Anything that they asked for, we made sure that they received it. I made sure that I actually advertised the ACES program because it's a citywide program, and I wanted to make sure that as many kids that could benefit from that program would get in. And I agree with some of the other speakers that the 187 model, which has kids with special needs alongside kids who are accelerated, is a beautiful model. I love that model. My children were part of the Links program, where we paired children in the Gen Ed program at 187 with kids with special needs, and both of the children in those pairings benefit immensely. I would love to see something like that program be expanded throughout this district, so we do have more D75 kids who are in an inclusive environment, as many kids who we can put in an inclusive environment as possible. I would love to see that, and I would support it. I do not believe in this false dichotomy between the accelerated people, the parents who want accelerated learning, and the parents who are advocating for all of the special needs that their children have. There is no reason. The programs that we're talking about for accelerated do not take resources away from any other kids. I would partner with any parent or any group that wants to fight to make sure that all kids are receiving the appropriate D75 services, the appropriate IEP services, the appropriate multi-language learners. There's no reason at all why we cannot do both. And anyone who wants to work with me on that, I would please reach out to me. I would be happy to do so. So with that, I think that's it. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yona, I see your hand. Yona Usufi, council member, go ahead.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I really, and I appreciate Vito's comments, and as part of the CEC, I've really tried to bring up the IEP topic, as Dr. Preto and you, Steve, are well aware. I have constantly been in communication with parents that have a lot of trouble with getting the IEP services. So I would love if I can reach out and actually do some concrete work and find out more how we can help different families. I was just on the phone today with a family whose child might be on the spectrum, and it is really upsetting of the process that a parent has to go through to insist to get services. So this whole process just keeps repeating itself. So I really need to talk to people who deal and make decisions regarding this. I know Dr. Preto helped me over the summer for some makeup sessions, but it shouldn't just be me that gets help, because I keep writing emails about this. You know, all parents that need some kind of IEP guidance, they should be able to get that. I would like to bring back on the table the summarizing topic. I will not let this go. So if there is somebody from FACE or somebody, I would more than gladly offer some of my time apart from working to talk to somebody to actually make something good happen for the summarizing, because there is such a variety of families in our district, and especially single parents or working parents, that summer programming is really crucial to some of us. And for some to make a choice between working, which is our livelihood, or taking care of our children, we shouldn't be put to that kind of choice when we live in such a good district based on all the presentation given to us. And also, I would like to give a shout out to the principals in our district. I was able to work with Miss Gordon, who is from PSIS 104, and she did a very informative summary. And I know on a personal level that that particular school did a lot of meetings with SLTs and PTAs. Also, my children's school, PS 170, they also are trying to spread as much information as possible for the middle school applications. So I really have appreciated the time that some of the people in this community are taking to inform the parents, because the bottom line is that there might be a lot of parents who like to ask questions, but for some reason or another, they don't get to do that. So if we are to make a decision on something, being informed, I think is the best way to go. So thank you for your attention and have a lovely evening.
Thanks, Yona. Any other council members? Okay, so let's just call a vote on this resolution.
That's me, I'm up. I guess I'm up.
Yep.
This is a resolution to approve the screen resolution that was just discussed. I'm going to take a roll call vote. President Steve Stowe,
Yes.
First Vice President Jennifer Hugh,
Abstain.
Second Vice President Elizabeth Chan. Did she ever show up? No. Recording Secretary Vito Labella, yes. Marie Bogaris, excused. Gada Amin, I'm sorry. Can I get your vote? Oh, I'm sorry, she didn't show up. Li Ping Yang, may I get your vote?
Yes.
Yona Isufi, may I get your vote?
Yes.
Maya, are you still here? May I get your vote? Okay. Kevin, may I get your vote? Joyce, may I get your vote?
Did we get Maya?
Maya, circling back to you.
Maya, can you hear us?
Is she still on?
She's here.
Maya may have stepped away. At present, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That passes irrespective of whether or not she votes. If she comes back before the end of the meeting, we'll certainly include her vote.
We got Yona. You said Yona or Maya? We got Yona's vote.
Yona was yes.
Okay, thanks, Vito. We'll now have, there's one speaker who, from the public speaking, who wasn't able to speak, and then another speaker who wasn't able to sign up for the public speaking, but would like to speak as well, Ellen McHugh, the co-president of the CCSE. I'm just making a motion. Would anyone be object to those two speakers speaking now after the resolution? And any objections? Okay. So American Debate League, you're up.
Yes, hello. Can you? Yes, I see myself behind you. How are you doing this evening?
Good.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to thank the CEC for giving us the opportunity to speak, and Superintendent Preto, is it pronounced Preto? Just want to make sure I have it right. Yes, I just want to let you know, the American Debate League, we partner with schools throughout New York City, Long Island, and Westchester. We have been historically in District 20 for, I think, 7 years now. Our first school was BSI. We currently work with BSI, elementary, middle, IS 187, JHS 220, and PS 48. And for the last couple of years, those schools have competed and also qualified for our city championships. Last year, and I'm going to come back to the CEC later on this year, because I would like to ask CEC as well as the SOUP to honor BSI, which competed at Harvard University virtually last year, and they were ranked #2 out of all middle school debaters in the country that competed at that tournament. This year, we want them to compete live at Harvard University. So historically, we had always had District 25, sorry, I was just on with District 25, District 20 Debate League. We've done that. We've hosted it at BSI and at 187, but we'd like to partner with the superintendent now and create a District 20, reinstitute or reestablish a District 20 Debate League, try to incorporate more schools so they could qualify for the Brooklyn Borough Championships as well as the city championships. finally, we'd like to reignite some old rivalries that were there. So BSI from D20 used to compete a lot with MS74, if you heard of them, in District 26, as well as TAG in District 4, which I'm sure the superintendent is aware of. TAG school. They actually compete against each other, elementary and middle. And from just being on CEC 4 last night, the superintendent, TAG, and the rest of District 4, including Nancy from District 4, wanted me to tell the superintendent, challenge on, because we want to have TAG compete against BSI again, because I know that's the district he's from. And then to finally conclude, I'd like to say I'd love to try to set up an appointment with you, superintendent, to see if it's possible we can discuss reestablishing the District 20 debate league, which we used to do. I'm not going to show you now because I can't share a screen, but we actually had a picture. We used to host it every year for about 4 or 5 years. So I can put my information in the chat. I can't see you, superintendent, but I'll put my information and I'm going to try to reach out to you so we can try to see if we can do that. I think that'll be a wonderful opportunity for more students in the district. And again, when I see District 4, I'll tell them that I told you, challenge on. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ellen, can you hear me?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I've been to a lot of different, I am a resident of District 20. My kids went to school in District 20. And when there were community school boards, I was very involved in the election process. So we've always had, District 20 has always had a great turnout. Even the last year when everybody said the school boards were ending, we had 22,000 folks turn out. Having said that, I want to thank you for the fact that this was probably the most civil conversation about a difficult topic that I've been involved in a long time. And granted, there have been times when I have not been civil, but tonight's conversation at least was civil and at best was polite. And I admire everyone's efforts to remain calm and to remain cool and collected and conduct yourselves in a professional manner. I hope, though, that in the discussions, especially in Jen Hugh's remarks, that you realize the emotional, physical, financial, and educational issues that hit us as parents of kids with profound disabilities. It would be, and it was, a great thing for my son to stay in his district, to have friends in his district, and to participate in the social and even physical, he played sports, activities after school. I think there's got to be some way where we can lay down the swords that we have all been waving in the air lately. And I hope that this conversation can continue and that when and if the resolution does have an impact on how programs are created, that we will do two things, that not we, that the community will do two things. One is recognize that in the issue of gifted and talented, talented is also I was going to say a talent, I'm repeating myself, but talented is also something that doesn't necessarily come with giftedness. And that, as George Bush so famously said, it's the C students that run the world. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you. Okay. That concludes our calendar meeting. A reminder that our next calendar meeting, our next monthly meetings will be not on the second Wednesday of November. They will be on the third Wednesday of November, November 16th. So just a reminder, and we are currently still planning to try to do it hybrid. I'm committed to the hybrid, so it's going to be at PS 69 Principal Kapatanakis' school.
What's that?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. I should have made that announcement when we actually had people in the meeting. I forgot. And just a reminder for anyone still on, we will be hosting Chancellor Banks on November 1st. And I just got the flyer for that from the DOE face. They just sent it like a day or two ago. And so I'll be posting that shortly on the CEC website, and we'll be circulating that. And that's going to be at PS 160. Next CEC meeting is November 16th, but the town hall with Chancellor Banks will be November 1st, 6:30 at PS 160.
Virtual.
Yeah, the DOE is handling the streaming of that one. It'll be in person, and they'll be streamed by and it'll be a DOE vendor doing all that. Thank God.
Take notes.
Okay, I make a motion, and just a reminder to CEC members and anyone who cares, we're going to do a very quick business meeting after this. There's really not much to do, but I make a motion to adjourn our calendar meeting. Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Thank you, everyone who stuck with us and attended tonight. Really appreciate it. Good night.